The half-term report. Dreaded by many, loved by very, very few. Well, at least that was the case at my Spit and Sawdust Comprehensive. Well, tonight we are going full-on form tutor with Swindon Town Football Club's class of 2022-2023. Who's in need of leaving polished apples at the teacher's desk after class? Who's the understated grey man hiding behind the classroom pillar? Who should be doing better? Who's set for the cane? With your help, your full report card for players and management will be complete by the time we hit 11 p.m. And we'll know who's either in for the treats or a thoroughly good grounding. Well, join us, ladies and gentlemen, with your speaker requests, direct messages and tweets. You really are the oil in this show's works. So please come on and share your joys and your pains. We're here for you. So come on for a good rant and get it off your chest. As usual, there's a Tom Broadbent Lounge goodie bag of signed stuff and personalised clobber could be yours for the taking. Well, along the way, we're also going to be discussing creepy Crawley, and by Christ, was it creepy? Big Dave's return in a Wimbledon shirt. Swindon Town women have been busy, and the town development side have also been in action at Newport County in a behind the closed doors friendly, which included the return from Doha of a certain Johnny Esther. Oh, how we wish we hadn't given the ball away with such aplomb on Saturday. Hey ho for Johnny. Well, we've also got news on an exciting new partnership that could potentially save you a tidy sum and help protect you and your loved ones, courtesy of a man dear to all of our hearts. But more on that later. Folks, all that and more is right here on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. And the faculty leading your grading of our stars alongside yours truly are Crispy. How are we, Chris?
I'm very good, mate. How are you doing?
I'm looking forward to being very schoolmasterly, tapping my cane on the desk and applying it to the backsides of certain underperforming personnel. I don't mind telling you.
Well, let's see. I think hopefully we're very similar, and we're very fair.
Yeah. Also joining us, a welcome return. He's been away for a bit, but Max, how are you?
Yes, very well, Hannah. Cheers for having me on again.
You're very welcome. Are you also tapping your cane in readiness for a jolly good shellacking in the classroom of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge tonight, Max?
My report cards are ready, mate.
Your report cards are ready. And of course, last but not least, co-host Joe. How are we, Joe?
Good evening, Mr. Hammerham. I promise I didn't do it, sir.
So you won't be throwing the blackboard rubbers at people's heads and generally being schoolmasterly and stern.
No, I'm not too sure I can reach Chris and Max over up north.
Well, hey, listen. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? We talk about the half-term report card, and Chris has set the tone very well, gentlemen. In that he said we're going to be fair, etc., etc. You almost think that we're kind of teetering on the edge of pretty much a universal thrashing. But let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, we are 3 points off fourth place. We are 8 points off of third place, and we have two players in every position, which on paper at least is surely going to be an advantage over the busy Christmas period that we have ahead. So it's going to be an interesting debate tonight. We're not going to try, as said on Saturday, there was no excuses. I genuinely was looking at that turd and wondering how the hell we were going to polish it. So we're not going to be sugarcoating anything tonight. But hopefully we're going to have a little bit of fun along the way and at least leave us all with a smile as we approach what should be a lovely afternoon, based on league form at least, under the floodlights at the county ground. But who would like to get us started? I mean, what I envisaged here, ladies and gentlemen, what I envisaged here is that we are literally going to go through the squad and we're going to give them an educational grade and some supporting commentary. And hopefully provide us all with a little motivation and direction after what feels like a fairly directionless couple of weeks. And if that sounds good to us all, I think there's no better place to start as a fully bona fide signed up member of the Goalkeepers Union than Middlesbrough's finest, Sol Bryn. Sol Bryn, my dear panel, who would like to go first? How do we feel that Sol Bryn is delivering for the mighty Reds of our glorious Swindon Town so far this educational term?
I think this is, as a member of the Goalkeepers Union, Hannes, I think the honour should be yours on this one.
Oh, that's very generous. That is very generous. Well, my notes have said ahead of Saturday, and his recent form, there has been a couple of little dips, but Solbrun has been a real shining light for me. You know, the whole adage, never fall in love with lone players and all of that jazz. Unfortunately, I'm hook, line and sinker for the man that should quite clearly be the next James Bond. For me, Solbrun has there's a couple of question marks around distribution. Solbrun's shot stopping has been, for me, it's been sound. His handling, by and large, has been decent, really, really decent. He's a big presence at the back. Someone said the strange thing was someone told me he's 6'4". Now I've stood next to the man, and I don't think he's got a good 4 inches on me. But yeah, I mean,
he's a big boy. Come on now, Hannes.
He's a big boy. Don't get me wrong. He's a big boy. But
you look at him in the warm up next to our current backup goalkeeper Jack, and I mean Jack Copland. It's like halfway up the size of Sol's scale. He's massive. He's a big bloke.
But with all due respect, I had all my kids with me, Joe, as well. You know, at the weekend, and my foster daughter remarked that he's approximately the height of our 8-year-old. So, Mr. Copland,
yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? You kind of feel bad for him in the men's game at the minute. Obviously, we'll get on to him in a second, but yeah, he's got a lot to learn from Sol, and I think he's got a good role model to learn from.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know, any goalkeeper is not going to be helped by a rapidly changing backline, and unfortunately, Sol has really had to suffer an ever-changing sort of defensive lineup. Injuries, obviously, I know he was back at the weekend, but injuries to Tom Clayton, who'd pretty much been, you know, the steady Eddie. Injuries to Angus MacDonald, injuries and loss of form for Frenchie, injuries to Kieran Harris, who'd only just returned. Fraser Blake Tracy coming in from left wing back essentially to slot in as a left centre back. You know, if as a goalkeeper, it's incredibly important that you kind of just build a almost like a sense of you know, you get almost like a sixth sense how your centre halves are going to deal with particularly high balls into the box. They know whether you're going to come, you know whether they're going to come. There is just something in there that breeds confidence, and if your back line is forever changing.
I mean, I was just going to say, I think every single one of our defenders in the squad has had an injury or a concussion or a period of time out. I wonder how many times we've had, or how many games we've had a consistent back four in place. I'd say it's probably between games 2 to 6, maybe.
Yeah,
when you had sort of Baldry and MacDonald.
And if you look at it, Joe, essentially, Sol, first couple of games of the season, you know, the crowd were really quite kind of vitriolic in relation to Sol. I think a lot of people were having, you know, Matty Kovar nightmares. That's a little bit hard on Kovar. You could pick any one of the 7 from that season. But I think, you know, it was one of those where no one had ever heard of him. You know, he got absolute pelters on his home debut. But, you know, again, the guy was getting to know his back line and sort of moving into the season when things were going sort of like relatively steady and there was sort of like progress every game, albeit unspectacular progress for some. You know, there's a pretty settled back line there. And you notice that Sol seemed to be at the peak of his powers. And it's no surprise to me that things have got a little bit shaky for Sol of late when, you know, we've lost the skipper. Who is going to be a big talker, a big organizer, you know, the leader at the back. And you've had injuries on, you know, on pretty much all the other centre backs. So I won't. I mean, for me, like I said, after the week, going into the weekend, I would have been saying to Sol he was a solid A, and I came out the weekend giving Sol a good B+ for efforts thus far.
I would like to add something about Sol here that's perhaps been a difference since Lewis Ward moved on. There's no competition there, essentially. And I think for a goalkeeper, I think you need that. You need someone to seriously push you. We've got a guy who's a backup keeper, but the backup keeper who's legitimately not pushing him.
Yeah,
isn't it? I think the women's team are suffering for something similar at the minute, where their main goalkeeper, their number one, is such a good number one. She's currently out injured, but they're struggling to sign a goalkeeper because the goalkeeper doesn't want to come in and know that he's going to be playing originally, but as soon as the number one comes back from injury, they're out again. So the club are in a difficult position where do you sign a player that's in their late 30s towards the end of their career just purely because they need bodies and they need someone of a certain standard of ability? But that goalkeeper's going to know that as soon as Sol's back, they're out. They're on their arse.
Yeah, I think it helps to have like a situation we had last year where as soon as Ward came in the team, he knew he had to perform to stay in the team. And, well, that's why he had such a good run towards the end of last season. Yeah, I do think you want them pushing each other. Yeah. I mean, the other thing I'd say on Bryn is that I can't think of a player that's won us more points on his own. Like, even just think back to, like, the sort of period in September, especially the Grimsby game where he's made 2 or 3 wonder saves from set pieces at the end. He's probably my highest rated player just through the points he's won us.
Yeah, that comes down for me. Even on Saturday, Max, there are a couple of times where, there were close range shots and it just seems to it finds his hands and sticks. Like, he doesn't spill a lot. There has been occasion this season where, there's been the odd sort of like Rick, but for a young goalkeeper, he's got a very, very, very solid set of hands. I mean, you guys will remember the conversation that we had at the start of the season, and we asked Wardy that directly when he came on the show, about how important is competition. And speaking as an ex-goalkeeper, my attitude has always been, I've never been in favour of a manager coming out and pinning his flag to the mast and saying, you are my number one. I think you've got to have 2 very, very capable goalkeepers in the squad. And those goalkeepers have got to go at it hell for leather. When they're out on the training ground, it promotes a real competitive edge, and rightly so. If a goalkeeper, it's a fine balance between a goalkeeper feeling like they're just skating on thin ice, and ultimately, feeling like they've got to stay on edge. There has to be an element of understanding if a goalkeeper makes a mistake. But if a goalkeeper is making mistakes and constantly looking shaky, then the other goalkeeper has got to come in. Like, that is what they're working for. And that also toughens them up mentally as well over the duration of the season. If there is a goalkeeper that can't handle that level of competition, then I would be asking why he would be in the squad in the first place. So when there was all the talk at the start of the season about, again, it's never been confirmed, but all the conversations around, there is a deal in place, he's got to play. There have been times where Ward came into the side, which sort of maybe dispelled that. But, listen, for me, I'm with you, Chris. Like, there has to be competition, and if the gaffer is going to stick with Copeland, I don't know. I feel sorry for Copeland really, because it is very, very, very early in the process for him. Now, you can go back to Casillas breaking into the Madrid team at 16, but you are talking about an absolute phenomenon. And I don't see Copeland being spoken about in those terms just yet. And that's not doing him a disservice. So I think, there is an argument to say, listen, at the end of the day, like, Copeland's 18. So it's not like he is a baby. But yeah, I'm with you, Chris. Listen, for me, I think, I'm sure that's probably played into, some of the issues that maybe Lewis has experienced of late. But, Lewis, that Sol has experienced of late, but only Sol's going to know that, right? So listen, like I said, for me, I've given Sol so far has been one of my players of the season, by the way. I'm giving Sol a solid B+. How are you guys looking?
I will give Sol a B+. Like, now, what I will say there is, when he first came in, he's been better than I thought he would be, and in particular, like, I went to the Leyton Orient game and he was outstanding there. I think he's been better than I thought he would be, and he's been solid. There's a little bit on the and R, but he's still young, and that's going to happen. But B+ for me. And I can't rank any of the other keepers because, well, what we've got to rank them on.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. How are you sitting with it, Max? Do you want to give us your score for the boy?
Yeah, I'd probably give him. I'd give him an A, to be honest. Just what I said before about the amount of points he won us on his own. And I think that sort of period, especially in September, where we were picking up a lot of draws, he was stopping a lot of those from being losses. So I think he's kind of kept us. He's played a big part in keeping us in the fight. And yeah, likewise with the other 2. Obviously Brandon lucky with his injury, and Couple of the young lad coming in, just both give him a standard C, I guess.
Yeah, it's like I said, you've literally got nothing to grade them on at all, have you? So, yeah, all right, we'll stick with that. Well, so listen, if this is parents' evening of sorts, there's going to be smiles, I'm guessing, all round in the Solbrin household. What that is on the proviso that Joe's not about to upset the apple cart.
No, I'd probably agree with you, boys. Because it's one of those ones where he has saved us a lot of points. He's grown into a position where, first home game of the season, he's walking to the town end for his warm-up, he's getting booed before he's even kicked a ball in front of the county ground faithful. So he's shown a tremendous amount of character to come back after conceding 4 goals in the first day of the season, being booed by his own fans the first time he's stepping out of the county ground for a league fixture. He's been unreal. It's just mentioned. That's what we're talking about, the competition that he's facing in that position. There is no jeopardy. I think we could do with a goalkeeper in January that is experienced enough to be pushing him for his shirts, because he knows that there's no jeopardy. If he concedes 5-6 goals in a game, there's no way he's going to get drops for an 18-year-old lad with no league experience. But yeah, having said that, B+, I think he's done really well.
So yeah, I would say that's, if we were school teachers, we'd be sitting wryly behind the desk at parents' evening, nodding sagely at a young Solbrin and shaking the parents' hands firmly and sending them off into the night to reward Sol with a Mackey's on the way home. So congratulations, Sol! Cracking start to your Swindon Town career, and long may that continue. We'll move on to the defenders. My dear panel and wonderful listeners. Now, top of our list, they're in no particular order. We have a certain Marcel Lavinia. So Marcel, former student of Jose Mourinho, debutant of Jose Mourinho in Europe, no less, made his debut for Town against Gillingham in that god-awful result at their place, and ultimately just sort of like an interesting time where we kind of needed a catalyst and a spark. He was probably the only bright spot of that day, but then strangely picked up a niggle, fell out the team, and then it coincided with the most incredible upturn in form and contribution from Romeo Hutton. But we're going to keep focused on Lavinia, because of late we've seen a little bit more of Marcel. He's managed to make his way back into the team, force his way back into the squad. And we've seen him pop up as a right back. We've actually seen him pop up on the left-hand side of the county ground. And conversations with Marcel afterwards outside the ground seem to suggest that he is very, very capable further up the pitch, based on his previous experience. So, where are we sticking Marcel? I mean, look, I'll get the ball rolling in saying that the guy has clearly got unbelievable pedigree. For me, it's kind of one of those frustrating things. Sort of like, essentially, it's a bit like having a Porsche on the drive that you can't afford the drive, or that for whatever reason, I don't know, someone's had the battery out of it. But you want that, you want to see that moving, like you want to see that out on the pitch. Every time I've seen Marcel Lavinia, I've looked at him and gone, by Christ, that's a player. Clearly a player that we're very, very lucky to have. As I say,
Marcel, he got injured at the absolute worst time, didn't he? We were at the game. I can't remember what it was. I think it was Newport when we won in the last minute. Obviously, he was sensational that day, and he started really, really, really well. I think if he doesn't get injured that game, I don't think we see the Romeo Hutton we're seeing right now. I think Marcel's probably been one of our best players in the squad.
Now, listen, but Joe, Marcel, if we're talking earlier about goalkeepers and competition, I mean, this is it in a bottle, isn't it?
Well,
Marcel
is that why
Lavinia
Romeo's
and
playing so well? Is that why Romeo's doing so well? Romeo, first couple of games of the season, I probably owe the bloke an apology, because I was battering the guy. And since he's taken over from Marcel, he's arguably the best fullback in the division.
Well, I mean, listen, the issue that you've got there, of course, is that, and we'll come on to Hutton. We'll speak about Hutton specifically. But he was being played out of position in pre-season. A guy that quite clearly his left leg is only really for standing on, and he's being played at left back. Now, yeah, you can always talk about cutting in and all the rest of it, but if you look at how Hutton has delivered for us since he's got back in the side, it's all about getting down the right, beating the fullback and pinging a ball across with his right peg. It's not about cutting in. So I think there was probably an element of getting to know you there. I think really getting back to Lavinia, what I really want to see is, whilst particularly we're having issues. I mean, so for example, if the manager, and we'll come on to talk about the manager, but if the manager is going to play in pre-season Hutton down the left-hand side, right footer on the left, I can't understand why he's got a fullback in Lavinia with that level of quality and that level of pedigree, and he's not willing to play him on the left-hand side. Like, for me, it's just utterly bonkers. Like, we've had this conversation about Ellis Iandolo like so many times, over and over and over again, that everyone is of the opinion Ellis Iandolo is a left-sided central midfielder. Like, that is where we've seen the best football consistently from Ellis. But yet, the victim of his own versatility, he ends up being played as a bloody fullback. Now, for me, we've seen Rob Hunt in seasons gone by, a right footer playing at left back, and he's mint. So here we've got Lavinia, who's now fit and able. I could not understand, like, literally, I was scratching my head on Saturday. Why are we persisting with playing Ellis out of position, which can't do him any good, gets the fans on his back, doesn't do his confidence any good when he's coming back from injury? Like, really? Do we really need to be playing him there? So it's a tough one for me. From what I've seen of Marcel, he's getting a C from me. Gents, but purely it's a little bit tough because we've not really seen enough of Marcel for me to be able to give him a higher grade. But what I have seen, I really, really like, and I think he's kept out the side based on circumstances beyond his control. That is just my hunch. So, how are you guys feeling about him?
Talk about the Lavinia. Was like to say against Gillingham, he was very good, and however much weight we put into the Pizza Cup. He was in that game when we had two players sent off, so we were against the ball. But on that day against Bristol Rovers, he was outstanding, absolutely outstanding. He's been massively underused, but like you, Mark, as well. It's tough to give him a mark because of how little we've seen of him. But I think from what we have seen of him, I want to give him a B-.
A B-. Very nice, Chris. Very nice. How about you, Max?
Yeah, it's one of those because the main place I've seen him was in the Stockport FA Cup game, where it's one of those he was brought on when the game was already sort of over and done with, and no one really do much. It's one of those where what has he played? He came on in the 90th minute in Crawley, and then he's had 15 minutes here or there. I think it's the thing. Obviously, we'll move on to Ellis, but I reckon it's worth giving him a good run, even if you are going to put him at left back, and just see what you can do, because he's obviously got the quality. And I think fullbacks is the kind of players you need to give a run in the team. Well, defenders in general, I think you need to give a run in the team before you can really see what they're about, right?
Yeah. Well, I think
yes, it's probably a C from me. To be seen as well.
Yeah. So we got what we got so far. Three starts, I believe, and 4 sub appearances. And like, I think, generally we like what we see, Max, right? I'm guessing you're of the same opinion. You like what you see.
Yeah, I like what I've seen from him. But again, I think it's difficult for a fullback to make an impact from the bench. So I think we'll see more of it. I think we could probably see more of what he's got to offer if he's starting games, even if it is on the left.
Yeah. How about you, Joe? Where's your head at with Marcel?
Yeah, I'd probably echo what you boys have just said there. I'd go with a C and a little smiley face sticker in his book, because I think he has been good. He's been really good. It's just not at the time on the pitch. I think it's Romeo Hutton's sort of been the beneficiary of Marcel's injury early on in the season, and you can't blame the gaffer really for playing Romeo consistently, because he has been as good as he has. I'm sure we'll see Marcel in a town shirt performing this season before the year's over. I can't see how we won't. I think he'll get into the team, and he might sort of knock Hutton out and keep him out of the side. It's either that, or I can see him being one of those ones where we'll let go and he'll end up playing in the Championship or the mid-Premier League by the time he's 25, 26.
Yeah.
And we'll be sat there with our hands on our head thinking, oh, shit, what could have been?
Yeah, that'd be absolutely shocking. Well, listen, I think we're all of a similar mindset. And I think as we apply maybe a bronze star, maybe possibly a silver, to Marcel Edwin Rodriguez Lavinia's daybook. Congrats, Marcel.
Can I just add something to this before we move on to the next player? And it's obviously we've got Hotton's been great at right back. But is there a potential option for us to play Lavinia further up the pitch where we can utilise both of them in the same team?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we've been saying, Chris, to be fair. Me personally, I'd like to be seeing him on the left-hand side.
I think Hutton could do a job at right wing,
Yeah, well...
Yeah, I was going to say on the right wing.
Well, clearly, you could argue against Stockport that Hutton was utilised much further up the pitch in the latter stages of the game, couldn't you? But hey, listen, yes, Chris, I think is the answer, and I think we're generally all saying that really that's kind of how we can see Marcel essentially breaking into the side. But yeah, I mean, it would be an absolute travesty if we've got a player of that quality in our squad. And we don't, especially off the back of current form. I mean, if there was a time to be shaking things up and bringing in some of these, some of the lads that have been waiting for their chance, I think Saturday is going to be that time. I've got a feeling you're going to see Marcel come in and start against Wimbledon. So yeah, we'll wait and see.
Lavinia right back, Hutton right wing, and I think if you use Jeff Cott down the middle, or if you buy a striker in January that's just going to be a fox in the box and a pest, Hutton right wing, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right, okay.
An experienced striker who's played here before.
Well, there's an elephant in the room.
No comment.
So, as I said, Marcel, Edwin, Rodriguez, Lavinia. We tap our Bic biros on the table, apply the bronze star to your daybook, and send you off into the night with a smile, but a stout reminder that we're expecting more from you. Now, listen, the next guy, Hutton, is next on our list. Romeo Hutton, a gentleman of my panel and dear listeners. We've already touched on some of the positives. Now, I'll start by saying Cardiff pre-season, sat at the county ground, myself and Declan doing the full match commentary, and he got absolutely slaughtered by ourselves up in the commentary box. Like I said, if ever there is a case for saying there is a player whose left foot is for standing on, that was the game where Romeo Hutton convinced me that he needs to be nowhere near the left-hand side. And it was actually one of those games where I really felt for him. He looked so uncomfortable on the left-hand side as a right footer that I was like, look, I've got to be frank. That's just, I don't know what the gaffer's seeing, but it's one of those where you carry on playing a player like that as the manager, people are going to be asking serious questions about what you're about, or indeed what you're taking, because he was literally the proverbial fish out of water. And bearing in mind, I mentioned Rob Hunt before. There, we've seen a player transition from right back to left back and actually look decent. Put a pretty good bloody fist together when we signed Paul Caddis. I'm sorry, Romeo Hutton, that was not the case with you, my good friend. And now, listen, I've got to say, as we've mentioned, Marcel Lavinia comes in and absolutely turbocharges Romeo Hutton. And the transformation was almost overnight. It literally was the moment Marcel Lavinia turned up. It was like someone said to Hutton, listen, pal, the writing's on the wall. We've got a Tottenham Hotspur, a former Tottenham Hotspur player with European appearances that has just signed as one of the big coups of our recruitment, our Moneyball recruitment program. The writing's on the wall for you, pal. Next thing you know, Hutton's turning into, elite level, prime David Beckham in the crossing game. So now, I don't know whether I could wax lyrical about Hutton in terms of, I could wax lyrical about him. I could sit here talking about him all night. I don't think I have seen a player with the crossing ability of Romeo Hutton in a town shirt since John Paul McGovern, and that is, we are literally going back 10 years as well. You guys will remember. So, listen, for me, again, much like Sol Bryn, one of our real standout performers whose grade is only really being dragged down by a sort of collective malaise that appears to have hit the squad of late. So, I mean, I am certainly giving Romeo Hutton a B+. And like I've said, the fact that the entire division, or certainly the last two games, it appears that the entire division is tuning into the fact that you've got to stick two players on Hutton. I think that tells its own story, doesn't it?
Well, just one thing I'll say is, it's like when I went down to the Orient game and I was speaking to Joe, Martin, and Hannah's Jr. And we were actually saying, Hutton, it was, just wasn't quite doing it. He was hitting the first man. And I think it was a game after that, he probably got dropped for a couple of games when they played Darcy at right back. But then Lavinia came in and something massively changed. But and like I say, but from that is, like I say, his crossing ability. More often than not, it's he's missing that first man. He's putting it in a dangerous spot. We just quite haven't got the attacking positions to take advantage of it more often than we should.
Yeah, all right. So listen, Max, I mean, taking on board what Chris is saying there, how much of this do we think is the Marcel Lavinier competition factor? How much of this do we think is just a question of, like, actually, Hutton's just like, literally, it's just clicked for him. Like, what is there something that we're missing here, or are you of the opinion? But in fact, just right before you chip in, thank you, My Sound Trauma. So who's just tweeted in and asked about Hutton, saying about his long throw being underused. Because, yeah, good point. We've not even talked about that. I mean, we saw a couple of appearances of it on Saturday that caused a little bit of menace. Every time I've seen it, he tends to cause a little bit of menace in the box. But the tactics the manager likes to deploy means that we don't really see that much more of it. So, Max, there's two questions in that. One, should we just be using that throw from the first minute and just bombing it in the box and causing complete and utter chaos? And B, is there anything other than competition that's caused this incredible Romeo Hutton renaissance?
So I think a long it obviously clashes with the style of football a bit, because we're obviously a lot more careful and considered in our approach. And I think that if you're gonna utilise his long throw, you need height in the box, which means you're either going to commit someone like Gladwin, or you dare maybe bring one of the centre backs up, and then that does leave you exposed if the ball happens to bounce the wrong way. So I kind of understand why it's not used, but I think it's not utilised enough when we're chasing games. And on him, I think he's just grown into his role. I think that obviously we were playing a very different system pre-season, which we quickly changed and adapted. And I think he's just grown into that role more, especially, putting him on the correct side for a start was like blindingly obvious from that Harrogate game, because he was a complete non-entity going forward, because he was trying to take everything to his right foot. And as soon as you get a guy on the left bringing it onto his right foot, it opens the ball up to the man who's closing him down and just makes their job so much easier. Hutton's just been. I think it is. I think it's maybe a little bit of a coincidence that it's popular. I'm sure that the competition is a factor, but I think he's just grown into his role. But what we said before about like possibly putting him right wing, because I still think he's defensively a little bit suspect positionally sometimes. Like I think back to a couple of goals we were conceding at the start where balls were coming across and both fullbacks were kind of all over the place. And a very similar one, I think it was it might have been the Tranmere game or the Mansfield. It was the Mansfield game. I think it was the first goal in the Mansfield game. Where side. So, but I think if you're talking about like an attacking fullback, I can't think of many better in the league at the minute.
Yeah, and like I said, Max, it would seem that the league's tuning into that as well, because it's really been noticeable, like the last two games, how as Hutton's sort of like shaping up to beat that fullback and cross over, you've literally either got a midfielder or you've got the other centre back sitting really snug in behind the first defender, sort of essentially ready to fling themselves out and just block the cross. So, and obviously we'll get on to what's going on down our left-hand side in a bit, but give us your grade for young Mr. Hutton. I've gone B+. What are you going with, Max?
Yeah, I think I'd probably go. I'm tempted to go into like A- territory. I'd probably say B+, just because defensively I think he's still a little bit suspect, but nowhere near. I'm not saying he's a poor defender by any means.
How about you, Joe? 19 appearances and 2 sub appearances. Where are you at? Give us a grade.
I'd probably go for a B, to be honest. I think obviously we've said about him coming back and flourishing after Marcel's injury. It's kind of like that sort of kid that was a bit of a dickhead with his mates, got suspended for a week. He's come back, he's separated from his friends, and now he's an A-star student. It's a
solid.
Yeah. I think he was brought in as a back five, as a wing back. Obviously, pre-season playing back three, we're playing Jakey and Maka up top. Once Maka leaves, obviously our options change. goes to the back four. I just don't think he's built to be a right back in a back four. He's a bit of a League Two Trent, isn't he? Really, I think.
Well, see, that's the thing, Joe. I was about to ask you because you're sort of suggesting we need to go with Reece James and Trent Alexander-Arnold here. Which
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think if I'm being honest, I'd rather we have Wakelin out on the right sometimes, and obviously he's great at cutting in that left foot because when he cuts in on the left from the right side into his left boot, he tends to make the keeper work. I think the win against Newport came from Jakey cutting in and just peppering shots to the goalkeeper. But I think Hutton, if you did play a rotation of Jeffcott or Wakelin or a Tomey or a different striker of that sort of number 9 mould, I think a Hutton puts the ball in a penny, and I think he would be a real asset on the right. He hasn't got to worry about getting back. He hasn't worry about being faced up 1-1, because you look at the amount of times teams face us and attack us down their right-hand side and face up Fraser Blake-Tracy. It doesn't happen.
Mm.
A lot of the attacking transitions that we face come down our right-hand side, and it tends to be up against Romeo.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think, solid B. I think he's a fantastic footballer. Obviously, his crossing ability, as you say, is absolutely just outrageous. He's not been bad at all. I say he's capitalised on Marcel's injury, and I think Marcel has pushed him on to sort of have that bit between his teeth and to prove us all wrong. And if he is listening back to this, Romeo, I'm very sorry.
Well, and it does say something. We talk about competition, doesn't it? Because I agree with you. I think that Romeo is getting pushed hard by Marcel, and that can only bode well, right? Because I think the little glimpses that we've seen of Marcel off the bench of late does show you like he's a little bit of a caged tiger. He just gives me the impression like the guy's ready to explode. So, listen, like I say, competition is certainly healthy competition. Speaking of healthy competition, the champ is here. Better late than never. But like my dad always said to me, son, never argue with a boxer. How are we?
Evening. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Sorry I'm late. I was busy getting punched in the face.
Well, that's well. Fair play to you, sir. Well, listen. Given that you're probably sitting there punch drunk, just give us a score. I won't ask you for because just in the interest of time, I won't ask you for too much patter about Romeo Hutton. But how are you scoring him from a school masterly point of view, Ellis, as you tap your cane at the desk and point accusingly at Romeo Andrew Hutton's parents? How's he fared for you so far this term?
I would give him a B. I think you've all touched on it, so I'm not really going to go back over the points. But I think he's sort of one of the best attacking fullbacks in the league. He's got great crosses on him. We've seen some good assists from him. Just can sometimes be caught out, sort of in the transition going back. But yeah, he's a top player and he's definitely grown into his role.
Okay, well, look. So I think we're going to be applying a nice silver star to Romeo Andrew Hutton's daybook and sending him on his way. But I'll tell you what, Chris. Any more feedback from your mic, mate? We're going to be booting you off.
I just said that because you didn't ask me for my mark.
Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. Please chip
in. I was only going to give an A minus, and the only reason I'm giving an A minus was because his defence at that game at Grimsby that we watched was outstanding. How many times did he clear the ball off the line, and his anticipation, whatnot? So I'm giving him an A minus because of that.
An A minus it is. Well, like I say, Romeo Andrew Hutton, we send you off into the night with a pat on the back, young man, and a little nod at the parents to ensure that boy keeps doing his homework and doesn't drop his standards. As we move on to Town's longest serving player, a certain boy from Maidstone who won the league in Kent. So here we are. Ellis Iandolo, divisive character. Let's hear it. What we thinking?
Not a left back.
Yes. Well, listen, Max, you've jumped straight on in there. We've already talked about this already at the start of the show. As we started dissecting this squad. It's a shame, isn't it, that he calls himself a left back. On the BBC Radio Wiltshire little stings that they do. I don't know why he's done that. I don't think he's helping himself. I think that does maybe open a window onto what the conversations are behind the scenes at the club and where Ellis sees himself played, which really, really surprises me, Max. Because, like I said, last season, some of his best and most consistent football for Swindon Town was on the left-hand side of the midfield, central midfield. Now, we're going to come on to talk about Mr. Gladwin and the problems that his superb form this season has caused, or quandaries rather than problems, selection challenges for the manager. But yeah, I mean, listen, Max, it's a real problem, isn't it? For Ellis, he's looked out of sorts this season more often than he's not. He's had to fight his way back from injury, which was a shame given the way that he finished last season. These heroic efforts at Port Vale away, when I think the extent of his injury was learned, everybody was kind of gobsmacked that he managed to stay on the pitch in the first place. There's no doubt in the kid's heart, and there's no doubt when he's on his game, that he is definitely one of the first names on the team sheet based off of what we saw last year. But this season, it's just not really happened for him, Max, has it?
No, and he's my favourite player. His name's on the back of my shirt from last year, and I'm just I think massively disjointed him. And then coming in, look, he's an okay enough left back at League Two level, right? But I don't think he's who you want at left back if we're wanting to go for promotion. I think positionally he's caught out a lot, especially the Stockport game in the FA Cup. Their right midfielder, I think it's South Hales or whatever his name is, was just having the time of his life around it, because I think if you get any good winger at this level with good movement, I think he's going to find it easy to go up against Ellis, and they're going to be more willing to take him on. I just think I don't think defending's his thing. I think he's great when you get the ball at his feet and he drives with it, which is why he can be good at left back. I think in a game where we're comfortable and we're in control, he can be okay there. But you want him left side of midfield, or even stick him on the left wing and have him pinging balls in from the left, because he works hard when he's in possession of the ball. I think he really struggles off the ball, especially.
Yeah, right. Listen, Max, we're having a little bit of trouble with your Wi-Fi, I think, at the moment. Only because you've got a little bit robotic, mate. So maybe fix up your position, much like Ellis. But look, while you're doing that, Max, we'll skip over to Joe. I mean, Joe, where are you at while Max is working out what grade he's going to apply for Ellis? Are you? I mean, we've got. It's been a tricky season for him this season. We've got 8 appearances, six sub appearances. Kind of tells its own story versus some of the figures we've talked about with the other lads. Where's your heart at?
Yeah, I don't know. It's the answer. I don't think. Obviously, he's been with us for a considerable period of time. He stayed with us when we were up shit creek with no paddle, and you've got to thank him for that. But I just don't know that he's the standard that we need him to be. And I think he's put in some good performances for us over the years, of course. Last season, attacking wise, he was really good. Again, defensively, maybe a bit suspect. I don't know. I said to you at the weekend, I mean, I had a mare at the weekend. A lot of the boys did. But Ellis, he's not had a good season. I'd probably, respectfully, maybe a D.
So efforts so far for Ellis, you're giving him a D.
Max, I'll give him a C- for sticking around in the 1920 season.
We're talking about this term, unfortunately, Joseph. So
all right.
I splinters in your bum, but I don't think Ellis is going to respect you digging up the past in order to sugarcoat a turd. So come on, hit me with it.
I'll stick with a D.
All right, a D it is. Max, give us your grade, pal.
Yeah, I have to say a D as well.
A D. How about you, champ? Where you at?
I'm giving him a D. A bit like what Joe said. I don't think he's sort of had the best start to the season. It's frustrating because we all know as Town fans that he's a good player and that there's a player in there because we've seen it. But it's just, I think it don't really help that obviously he's coming off an injury, and he's just trying to find his way back into the team. But just from the performances that I've seen, it's just you can see he's trying, but it's just not working. So yeah, a D.
A D, okay. And Chris, did we get a grade from you?
I'm going to go D- here, and I think that's near enough fully because he's been playing at left back, and it's the Crew game that sticks in my mind. It was just off it, and then that chance in about 5 minutes in the second half, you probably had a great view of that. How did he miss that? I just and I think I'm giving him a D plus, a D minus, purely because he's him in that position where he's that's not his position. I think over the last few games, I think we've seen he's not a left back, and we will get much better out of him in midfield.
Yeah,
I saw that last season. How great, and we can utilise his passing and whatnot, but at left back, that's just defensively, he's just not up to it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Chelsea have tried playing Raheem Sterling as a wing back this season, and it kind of feels, for those of you who watch Premier League football, with Ellis, it kind of feels a bit like that. And I can, I believe. Listen, do I know Ellis personally? No. Do we go out socially? No. Would I know if Ellis is frustrated or not? Probably not. But my hunch is, based on some of his body language, some of the facial expressions that we see in games, that he spends a lot of his time at the moment frustrated. Now, listen, last season, so this year, we're at the halfway point pretty much. We've got 8 appearances, 8 starts and 6 sub-appearances. All of last season, Ellis, unbelievable returns last year, 46 starts and 6 sub-appearances. So just to kind of like contrast season on season, like the guy is coming back from, pretty nasty injury. He's trying to find his way back in. He's trying to find his way back in a position which we all have pretty much universally said is quite clearly not his issue. So listen, for me, Ellis Carlo Iandolo, as I look sagely over my glasses at you, I would say you've quite clearly been sat by the window in the classroom whilst the girls' school across the way is emptying out. And there are far too many distractions for you in class, young man. And your best position is probably over in the centre of the class where those distractions don't exist, is probably what I might be tempted to say. But listen, me personally, I'm also of the opinion that Ellis has given us. I mean, from last season, I would have finished the season saying to Ellis, that's a B+ season. Ellis is a D based on the returns at the start of this season. But I'm full of optimism because, like I said, I've got all of last season to go on. I think, he proved a lot of doubters wrong last year. The problem is there were a lot of doubters that were in place for, his various injury hit and bit part seasons leading up to last year. And, our fan base loves a scapegoat. And, Ellis at the moment is at risk of becoming the latest Michael Pook or a player of that ilk, or Ben Gladwin of last season, which I think would be very, very harsh. So, like I said, really, for me, it's a D for you, Ellis, and tap, tap, tap. Things must get better is what I would be saying to him, or potentially you're not going to be getting into sixth form. But we move on from Ellis. And we move on to another player down the left-hand side. Now, someone turned to me at the weekend, Joe Vincent, and said something along the lines of, what a revelation. So, Joe, you were with me at the game at the weekend. No better person to dive head on into the glory of Fraser Blake Tracy than yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, from a human point of view, having spoken and sort of liaised with Fraser when he came onto the show, he's a genuinely top bloke as well, which it goes a long way for me. But we're not here to talk about his banter or his manners. But no, he's been probably the signing of the season, I'd say. It's just a bit of a shitter that he's a loan, and we know the script with Swindon Town and successful loans. I think, honestly, you've got to break the bank to sign him in January. Don't think you need to. Obviously, he's out of contract with no option in the summer. Genuinely, Burton shouldn't be turning their nose up at a 10-15k bid for him. He's been sensational in the air. I don't think I've ever seen a fullback win the amount of aerial duels that bloke does. He gets up and he wins everything. He's progressive with the ball. He gets forward. He gets into the box. He was probably our biggest goal threat of the weekend, which isn't saying too much. But in the first half, especially, he was really, really good. He can beat a man. He knows where to run. He knows where to follow the ball. He for a left back. Honestly, in my time, I genuinely don't think I can name you a better left back that I've seen in a red shirt.
Joe, the conversation we were having at the weekend was that, wasn't it funny? Like in his first few games, everybody said, both in terms of appearance and playing style, he was the regen of Jay McEverley. But yeah, you're absolutely bang on. Like what we've seen, I mean, it's interesting given his positioning at the weekend that he was actually one of 3 centre backs, but he was finding himself in attacking left-sided positions, which I thought was fantastic. He'd obviously been given the remit to get forward, even from that position, but.
He's got an engine on him as well. He can do that. He can move forward. He can move across the pitch. He can get forward. He can get back. Honestly, I mean, you mentioned there, Jay McEverley. With all due respect to Jay, Fraser absolutely pulls his pants down. He's sensational. He's probably I'd give him an A-star. He's my player of the season so far. I think him and Tom Clayton, before he got injured, obviously got injured, and that's not his fault, have been our 2 players of the season. Just we need to sign him in January. We need to sign him.
I think what I've seen from Blake Tracy is a very different fullback to what Hutton is. Whereas Hutton's, the 80% of what he does is his crossing, whereas Blake Tracy's. Was it Blake Tracy actually who put the cross in for Wakeland against Sutton?
It was, yeah. I think you'd probably find that Blake Tracy and Hutton have similar amounts of assists. I just think Blake Tracy's attacking is sensational as well as his defending. He's literally, people thought he'd be a steady Eddie coming in. He's good at everything down that side of the pitch. Whether it's defending, whether it's retaining the ball, getting forward, he's sensational.
Yeah, he's obviously a lot more solid than Hutton. And obviously, the big thing about Hutton is getting the ball because his crossing's so good. But Blake Tracy's there, and what he adds in the air as well. And who was he scored against? It was criminally disallowed.
Oh no, that was
Colchester.
Cole. Yeah.
I don't understand why that was. Yeah, never mind.
I mean, again, that was a header. The guy has got an absolute spring on him. Yeah. And the thing is, he gets his head in positions that 9 times out of 10 people will be thinking, "Oh no, sod that." He's just a hard bastard.
Yeah, but
it was a laser goal against Stockport from the edge of the box. Really nice bit of play on that goal.
Yeah, he also cuts in very well, and whatnot. Now he might not be the guy who's putting in the volume of crosses that Hutton does, but his positioning and he comes inside and he looks for it is very good. So if there's an option there, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, from my point of view, I think he provides us with wonderful balance down the left-hand side when he's got the opportunity to get forward. And I think one of the problems that we've got at the moment is we look so one-dimensional, as in our attacking threat, our assist threat on the right-hand side from Romeo Hutton. We're lacking that. If you play Fraser Blake Tracy as a left centre-back, you miss that down the left-hand side. And we will. There are other options in the squad that I think could restore that, and we'll come on to some of those conversations, but for whatever reason, they're not being used. But, I mean, yeah, listen, Joe, I echo everything you said, but I'd also layer in the boy's got an excellent turn of phrase. He's obviously been paying attention in his English classes when he describes the mighty Swindon Town as, quote, a proper football club. And I know that there is... That's probably not necessarily going to be music to the ears of the supporters of the clubs that he's already they're paying part of his wages. But listen, I mean, the fact is he wants to be playing his football with us, right? So he wants to be at Swindon Town. He's turning it on for Swindon Town. His performances are getting better and better and better and better. 17 appearances, all starts, 1 goal, stuck his head where literally you wouldn't want your head stuck, as Joe's mentioned, and suffered a pretty nasty facial injury as a consequence of that. For me, he is another one of we talk about standout performers. He's one of the real kind of bright spots for me. And he, for me, is an A. A for effort, A for output. I can't honestly point too many fingers at him. I think there's maybe one goal this season where I was left pointing fingers at him, and it was at home. And I'm trying to remember who it was, when he was caught awfully out of position or beaten far too easily. But hey, listen, we can't all be perfect. And given that his performances have got better and better and better in the way that Town's progress was getting better and better and better and better with every game before we've hit this recent plateau. So, yeah, I mean, he's a must sign in January for me. You know, what Burton would get for him if they try and recall him, he's clearly not going to sign an extension on his contract there unless there is some seismic shift. I think he's said enough to kind of essentially put anyone at that club off of wanting to keep him. So really, for me, the viable option is we just get a deal done. And I think he's probably shown enough as well to suggest he's still young enough that he's got some resale value there at 27 years of age. He could have a couple of super seasons for us and still find himself ending up in the upper echelons of League One, hopefully with us. But if he was to be transferred off, and possibly even delivering a steady job in the Championship as well. So a solid A for me. Who's not given us a grade so far?
B plus.
Me.
B plus.
A.
B plus, A, and a B.
A.
A for you, Ellis. So A for Ellis, A for me, B plus for Chris. And what did you give, Max?
I also gave an A.
You also gave an A. So Fraser, John, Blake, Tracy. A firm handshake from the form tutor. A gold star in your daybook. And we send you off into the night to no doubt be rewarded with the delights of a Nando's or some such like treat from your parents on your way home. So moving on from Fraser, Blake, Tracy, we've got another player on the left-hand side. Now, I mentioned players that potentially could offer us some balance, and I say this having seen the lad for a period of time against Woking in pre-season, and he, for a lad that described himself as an engine, Joe, you and I quite liked what we saw, but I'm going to ask any of you guys, Chris, Max, or Ellis, to tell me why the bloody hell we're not seeing anything of Reece Devine at the moment.
Well, I can't answer that as well. Is he injured? Is he's not there? Is what?
It's a good question, isn't it? What?
Yeah, I think he was injured to start. He was injured in pre-season, wasn't he? I think, and then he played. He didn't even play 90 minutes in the Plymouth game in the Pizza Trophy, and yeah, he's not even been on the bench in the league. I'm just looking out. He was on the bench against Stockport away in the FA Cup, and he played 83 minutes against Plymouth at home in the Pizza Trophy, and that's it.
He's been training, so.
And another thing about that could be why we're not seeing much of Reece Devine, Fraser, Blake, Tracy.
Yeah, there is that. But what I will say off the back of Saturday is that I'm going to be stamping my feet and throwing a bit. If we're going to keep Fraser, Blake, Tracy as a left centre back, then like we talked earlier about Devine, but about Lavinia. But by Christ, at some point we've got to see Reece Devine. Like, what's the point on bringing this lad in? Again, we talk about pedigree. All right, appreciate he was at Walsall last year, but a young lad at Walsall last year on loan from Manchester United. He's ended up at Man United for a reason, because there's a player in there. Walsall fans were a little bit indifferent in terms of their overview of Devine, much like Rovers fans were when Harry's joined us. Walsall fans didn't have much to say about Reece as he joined us this season. But again, looks like a very, very nippy, crucially left-footed left back. So if you're going to start moving your so far arguably player of the season into left centre back, then surely you want a left-sided fullback playing off of him. But hey, listen, we don't, again, unless anyone can tell me a reason, they can't. There's no suggestion of any kind of dissent in the ranks, or there's never been any mentions from the manager about disciplinary issues. So I'm guessing it's just going to be a question of of set up options on the bench, tactics, and having the best options to come off the bench. Right, the last couple of weeks, but
I also think though that the last couple of games have shown us that three at the back doesn't work. So I wouldn't be surprised if Blake Tracy has shifted back to left back, and then obviously that makes that a bit of a moot point. But I see what you're saying. But because he's been so good, there's just been no opportunity really for Devine to get in there.
I think that's the point, Chris, isn't it? I mean, I'd love to know, like, Scott Lindsay's honest thoughts, like whether or not he was expecting Fraser Blake-Tracy to be that good. Because you've got to remember, cast your mind back to the start of the season, we had a real problem at left back. Obviously, Ellis, Reece Devine had come in as first choice and got himself injured. Ellis Iandolo was the backup option, just couldn't get himself fit. That injury just like continued to niggle. So Fraser Blake-Tracy was brought in kind of late doors just before the start of the season. And, I would love to know whether or not they expected him to be as bloody good as he is. And that's the problem. Much like Ben Gladwin's re-emergence this season, like prime Ben Gladwin re-emergence this season, Fraser Blake-Tracy, I suspect his emergence is causing, again, a selection headache and potentially a kind of tactical sort of imbalance.
Yeah, I'm sure even the chat at the time when we brought him in he's injury covered because at the time both Ellis and Reece Devine were out injured, so we just had no one who could play left back at the time. So I think it was a case of injury cover, and he's just played his way into the team, and he's pretty much undroppable at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look. Let's. It's a tough one, isn't it? I'm gonna be asking you for a grade regardless. We've
C again because you can't really
one performance. What are you going to go for, Max?
Yeah, I C because I don't think you can really say anything either way.
Yeah, you've gone middle of the ground. Splinters in the bum. C. What about you, Chris?
N/A.
Okay. Oh, all right. We'll go with that. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'd say with Max as well. C. You can't really give him much of a grade. Just haven't seen enough of him.
And what about you, Champ?
I'm giving him a D because he didn't look that good in the Plymouth game, and that's the only time I've seen him play.
All right. Well, I'm sitting here at the teacher's desk, and I've shuffled my chair forward, and I've pointed an accusing finger at Mr. Devine, and I'm saying this: yeah, you've had a little bit of hardship, young man, but you know why you're here. We know why you're here. It's about time you start showing us why you're here, and that you really, really want it. Do you want it, young man? Do you really want it?
He's got a poor absence
getting
as well.
Nod back at me. I'm hoping he's nodding back at me right now, because I've got a feeling. I still think there's a whole second half of a season to come yet. So there's a lot of football to be played, and at a time where we're going to start picking up, potentially even more injuries, and we are particularly stretched at the back. I believe now is the time we're going to start seeing a bit of Reece. I'm not going to be as splinters in the bum as you, Chris. I'm going to give him a D. Because again, Plymouth, he didn't exactly sort of, set the world alight. However, and also it's just, come on. How foolish of you to get injured before you've even had a chance to make your full competitive debut, man. Come on. Have a word with yourself. So a D for young Reece it is. But look, we will move on from Reece, and we will move on to Kieran Brennan. So a little bit of a re-emergence. If you cast your minds back 4 weeks or so, we were pretty much saying, Brennan's going to be gone in January. We were leaving the Broadfield Stadium at the weekend, all pretty much sort of saying to ourselves, well, actually, it was a tough one looking for a man of the match on Saturday, but potentially Brennan's one of those guys that you'd be pointing to as saying he was the best of a bad bunch. For me, I reflect on Kieran Brennan when we signed him. Sheffield Wednesday fans were raving about him, and they were saying that they thought that this season was going to be the season where he kind of broke in at Hillsborough and really started to sort of do the business. When I've heard Brennan talk, he's quite clearly a confident older head on young shoulders. Some of his earlier performances since he's broken back into the side, he's looked a little bit clumsy. I mean, look, the bottom line was he was absolutely taken to the cleaners. Reminded me a little bit of like Maicon when Gareth Bale cleaned him out when we played Salford earlier in the season. He was absolutely destroyed. And it didn't seem to do an awful lot for him, both physically and mentally. He's forced his way back into the lineup, part fortune because of injuries. But he's done enough for me to be keeping his place, even with players returning. And I think it says a lot that Matt Bowdry has struggled to get into the side, even when he's been fit ahead of Brennan. I liked his scrapping spirit at the weekend. I particularly like the fact that he quite clearly put one on the keeper just after the keeper decided to put more than one on young Saidu Khan. But I really like Kieran Brennan. I think there's a proper player there. I like the fact that as a centre-half, he quite clearly wants to get the ball down and play it. He's a ball-playing centre-back, which is always pleasing, very much in keeping with the Swindon way. And I'm giving Kieran Brennan, based on the fact that he's come back from a pretty low ebb start, I'm giving him a C- for effort so far. With quite clear, he for me is on a sharp incline of improvement. What about you, Joe? Oh, we've lost Joe. Okay, what about you, Matt?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, all right, Joe. What about you, Kieran Brennan?
Yeah, I'd probably echo what you've said. Again, he had a kind of a rough start, really. Obviously got a concussion in the Salford game. The Harrogate game was a rough start for everyone. Yeah, he's done well, to be fair to him. I'd kind of written him off, I think, a little bit. Maybe 10 games into the season, just purely because we weren't seeing him play. But he has been really good last few games, and we spoke about it on Saturday, didn't we? That he seems the sort of player that really benefits from playing a long run of games. I think the way that he looks, I think just I get the vibe that if 3 or 4 games off the boil, his fitness just drains out of him, and it'll take him 3 or 4 games to get back into the speed of things. So we're probably seeing the best of him in the minute, and I think, we've got Angus coming back. We've got, Matty Bowdry obviously got injured yesterday, which we don't know the extent of that. I'm sure we'll find out from Andrew Hawes' interview with Scott Lindsay tomorrow. But he's probably a mainstay in the team alongside Tom Clayton.
What about you, Chris? Where are you at with fellow Northerner Kieran Brennan?
I'm not a Northerner. I just live here.
Oh, you clearly are a Northerner. Listen to your voice, man.
Yeah. But, well, with Brennan, when he came in, I expected more from him early season. But since obviously Tom and Angus got injured, he's come in and he's done a good job. And you haven't really noticed him. And I think as a centre-half, that's a very good thing.
Steady Eddie, mostly, Chris. Steady Eddie.
He's done great there as well. And he can slide across the right back and play there quite well. And if he needs to slide, like when Houghton goes up, he's slid across there quite effectively, which I thought was good. So I'll give him a C-.
C-. How about you, champ?
I'd give him a C, just a fairly average C. I think that's what he's been this season. He's been average. He's sort of Chris touched on it. He's sort of gone under the radar a little bit. He hasn't had any standout performances, but I wouldn't say sort of he's been the cost of many goals this season. Obviously, he just hasn't really had the chance to settle into the team and sort of settle with a back 4/5 with him, because obviously players are picking up injuries, so that back line is constantly changing, which I can imagine for a centre back could be quite challenging. So yeah, considering injuries and sort of not getting probably the minutes that he'd like, I think he's been fairly average. So I'd give him a C.
A C. Here, Max. I mean, I don't know whether you're of this line of thought, mate, but the weekend potentially is going to be a make or break game, I believe, in many ways for Kieran Brennan, because I think such was the level of dissatisfaction with the turnout at the weekend, and also such is the level of injuries that we've got centre back, that playing 5 at the back on Saturday at home, that would be a very, very brave, and I would argue foolhardy, or some might say bloody stupid Scott Lindsay to do that at the weekend. Now, Kieran Brennan playing in a 4, that's quite the leap of faith, isn't it, Max?
Yeah, I just can't I mean, mate, if Clayton and McDonald are available, them two play, right? If it's a back four, I think they're a perfect centre-back partnership. I think Brennan, I think he's obviously had to play a lot more football than I would have expected of him, especially given since Clayton came in and started playing centre-back. I know he's got a lot of starts recently, and he's one of them. He's steady enough. He didn't have the best game at Stockport, but nobody had a good game at Stockport. So other than that, I think he's been okay. And I think he's a good option to have as I think as a third choice centre back. I think he's pretty decent. But yeah, I think if we go back to a back four, I think if he's not playing, then even Chef Wednesday are going to have a thing to think about whether they think, well, if he's not going to get the football there, are we going to think about recalling him? Because I doubt they've loaned him to us to have him sat on the bench.
Mm. Yeah, it's a really, really good point. I mean, I personally, he feels to me like, and the performances that I've seen from him so far suggest that he is a centre-back that has been signed, particularly if you think about the point of the timing of his signing, rather. It seemed that we were recruiting around a 5-3-2, and there's been some discussion and pushback from the club and the management on that. But yeah, like I said, I mean, it may well be at the weekend. I mean, we still haven't had the presser yet, so we don't know the extent of Tom Clayton's injury. But, you know, if Clayton's injury has flared up again, or he's had a relapse of what he had before, then, you know, and we've lost Kieran Harries and potentially we've lost Matt Bowdry, then we're back to the kind of, you know, bare bones at the back there, aren't we? And Kieran Brennan potentially, like I say, having potentially to play. Imagine him playing in a back five and Ellis reverting to a central defensive position again. But, I mean, that's hardly ideal. So, I mean, for me at the weekend, I'm gonna throw a right if I see us do anything other than play four at the back.
So I think the in the game against Newport, obviously it was only friendly. The fact that Angus MacDonald played there suggests to me that he will play on Saturday. And I actually think that if we're going to go with a back four, Brendan playing alongside MacDonald will be a big help to him because he'll talk to him all the way through the game.
Yeah,
if Clayton's not available, and it'll suit us more to play a four there. Slide Blake Tracy back across. I'm not too fussed if that was our back four there, and I think Brennan, if it came to that, I think MacDonald would be good for him.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout. And I think you're absolutely right, Chris. I think, you know, he's got enough. From what I could see, the coverage of the match sort of, you know, wasn't exactly brilliant, the Newport game, but it does suggest that Angus got 90 minutes under his belt, unless someone can sort of, you know, correct me on that. So I think, yeah, you're probably right. The skipper's probably in a position where he's going to be coming back in at the weekend. And they're going to have their, I mean, we're going to come on talking about Big Dave, but Josh Davison is going to be quite the test for them. You know, fast and physical, and is scoring a lot of goals for Wimbledon as well. So we can't afford to be experimenting too much at the back there. So it's a big weekend for those two boys. But all right, well, look, generally across the board, it would seem that we're all sort of settling on C territory for Kieran Brennan. Would that be right? Has anyone else got any contribution on that other than a C? No,
I'll stick with a C.
A C it is. Right, well, Kieran Thomas Brennan, we stand you up. We send you out of the school hall with a pat on the back. And thanks for coming. We hope you're enjoying your time at the school. We'll be quite happy for you to stay, but we'd understand it if your parents want to take you to that other school on the way there a little closer to home. Kieran Brennan, a C it is. Right, now the next signing caused quite a stir in pre-season when we found out that we were signing Liverpool's under-23 captain, Tom Clayton, a player who could play left-back, central defensive midfield, and apparently could do a bit of a job at centre-back. Scottish under-21 international has pitched up, looking like he needs a bloody good meal, but by Christ has that boy delivered this season. Really, really cruel that at a point where, you know, this kid was playing absolutely out of his skin, and was a real kind of pick of the bunch back there, that he's ended up picking up an injury. And again, potentially he was substituted off early on Saturday, and we're hoping it's not going to be a relapse and he's out for a while. But it would be very, very Swindon Town for us to end up losing him for a prolonged period. But we hope that's not going to be the case. I mean, wow. what is there not to be said about Tom Clayton? So on Saturday, I remarked to Joe that Clayton really, really does look like he's been hitting the weights and hitting them hard, because he's really, really starting to fill out now, from the waif of a player that we saw at the start of the season. The thing that's really impressed me about Clayton is that not only has he had the minerals to drop down into League Two, and ply his trade at this level, and say quite openly it was about just getting out, coming to a big club and playing games. But the guy's just completely unfazed, irrespective of who he's playing against. And he has had some big physical tests so far this season, and by and large has passed them with flying colours. I can't see anything other than an A for Tom Clayton. Where are you at? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Go on, champ.
Yeah, I think you summarised that perfectly. I'd give him an A. Like you said, he when he comes to the club, he was quite a let's say frail sort of what's the word? Stature. That's the word. But yeah, he's filled out, and it hasn't really looked like an issue. He's strong on the ball. He's put in some cracking challenges throughout the season, and if he's fit, he's, for me, one of the first people I'm putting on the team sheet on the day. He's reliable, commanding, for a young player. Yeah, A, definitely for me.
Reads the game fantastically well, doesn't he?
100%, yeah.
And has a lovely range of passing about him as well. Who wants to go up next? Chris, have you got to say?
Can I say that he's this year's Conroy, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, the ball playing centre back, the guy that can.
No, you cannot say that.
Getting at. Because he's played. You see some of those passes that when he just that left foot is a wand at times and whatnot, and a lot of our success last year came from those sort of passes that Conroy put out, and I think we've got a similar thing with Clayton, except he knows how to defend.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment. Max, obviously you're a little closer to his point of origin than us. What's your take?
Oh yeah, I'm just back. Yeah, I mean, I heard you mention about him being like the ball playing centre back, and I think that's why he's perfect next to McDonald, because I think McDonald's like very assured defensively, and you've got Clayton to play it out for us, which I think we've missed in his absence, because a lot of it kind of started from his side or from Hutton's side in defence. So yeah, I think he's a really important part of the way that Lindsay wants to play. And I think, yeah, having him back, like, hopefully his injury's not too bad if we can have him and Donald back in the side, because I just think it's, out of all the centre-backs we have available, I think them two in a back four is the perfect partnership. So hopefully it's not too bad.
Max, do you think that when he signed Clayton, I know this is a difficult question, but do you think when he signed Clayton, he signed him as a centre-back, or do you think he signed him to sort of essentially put a rocket under Reedy?
Yeah, I think he signed him to be that Lou Reed position, but obviously we needed someone at centre back. He's put himself there and he's played into the position, and I think he's the top. I think he is probably our best centre back, to be honest.
And Joe, I mean, like I mentioned it, Joe, how pleasing is it that you see a lad that came in, with some of the kind of physical obstacles that Tom's got, and I'm saying that being really polite, but. He's not your kind of typical 6'4" League Two sort of central defensive shithouse, but he's just like he looks totally unfazed. Like there were a couple of matchups this season where I was looking, going, "Oh my god, we're in for a long old game," and it was just his reading of the game, just almost diffuses the physical threat of the other player. Like it's just his football brain is like 2-3 yards ahead of anything else he's come up against this year. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, 100%, mate. Honestly, I can give you two reasons outside of wearing a Swindon. Well, one reason is wearing a Swindon Town shirt, but it was the first 5 minutes of him wearing a Swindon Town shirt. Before that, obviously, we found out that he captained Liverpool at under-15s through to under-23s as a Man United fan. Points. I think that's hilarious and
I still
fair
think
play to
that's
him.
brilliant. You can't have a Man United fan with a Scouse accent. I just think that's absolutely magnificent.
You'd be surprised up here, mate.
Mate, honestly, it knocked me for 6. I sort of asked the question to him on the show, half expecting a Liverpool or an Everton answer, hoping for an Everton one just to poke fun at him, captain Liverpool. When he came out and he was like, "Oh yeah, Man United," honestly, I had to try my hardest not to scream on the show because it's brilliant. But anyway, the first 5 minutes of seeing him in a town shirt was at Woking, and that ball that he put over the top for Maka for the third goal. Oh my god, he
so
had me
good.
at that. He had me at that. The guy's he's so good.
He had the gaffer purring after the game as well, and he was trying to play it down like, "Oh well, we know he's got that in his locker, this, that, and the other." But just the look of sheer, it was almost like, a guy that suddenly is, he's received a parcel in the post and they've sent him another one by mistake, and he's opened that. He's got, oh wow, it was like all his Christmases come at once.
Mate, he literally, that is a pass you'd expect to see come from either probably 2 other people in the entire squad in Reedy and Gladders. Like, honestly, there aren't many people in our squad that can play that ball. And Tom does it from the back sensationally every time. The guy doesn't need to be a big lad. He's putting on muscle, he's putting on weights, like we've seen it. But the way he defends is very sort of Maldini-esque. He stands off. He works out where his opponent or what he's going to try to do with the ball. He doesn't fly into him. He's not blood and thunder. He's not like a Blake Tracy where he's literally getting his face and get the ball at all costs. And if it comes with claret, it comes with claret. The guy plays it with his brain, and he's a really, really good footballer. He's a really big asset for us.
I think with him as well as obviously he's been great in defence, and I think and that's probably will help to his football education. But I think essentially, or ultimately, we'll probably see him play in that sort of Lewis Reed role, that defensive midfield, because I think that's the position that utilises his skill set more than anything else.
I think you're right, Chris. The problem that you've got, of course, because I can absolutely see him being kind of like the quarterback for the team. The problem that you've got, of course, is that we are so absolutely hammered with injuries in the centre-back position that we haven't really got a choice. And it would just be the cruel irony if, the presser comes out tomorrow and, Tom's going to be out for, again, a period of time. I just think that would just be a cruel irony. A player that hasn't got a history of bad injury issues, that is playing the way that he is, and he's just like, again, wretched luck. But we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that is very much not the case. So listen, I gave Tom Clayton a solid A. Where were you guys? Just give me your grades.
A.
Right, fantastic. Well, Thomas Andrew Clayton, with your 17 starts plus 1 sub appearance, a hearty sort of grab of the shoulders from the form tutor, a steely look in the eye, and give me more of the same, young man, and stop doing daft things to get yourself injured, because we're going to need you for a long, grueling second half of the season. Well, we send you on your way, Tom, and we move on to the captain himself. So we've got Angus MacDonald. Who wants to lead on Angus MacDonald? So 11 appearances before he obviously got so brutally injured, and it really was a brutal injury. Horrible. Seemed to be like a collision come awkward fall, resulting in a dislocated shoulder blade, a dislocated collarbone rather, and a pain-stricken Angus MacDonald departing the camp. And that not too much.
Sounds Scottish.
I beg your pardon?
Sounds Scottish.
Do you think he might sound Scottish? Yeah, I think he. Well,
but I think what we saw, and we've probably noticed it more from when he's been out, is that MacDonald is just a proper defender. And he organises that back line. I know some people didn't like him because of certain incidents, which I'm not going to go into, which I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But just the way he defended, the way he managed that back line, and if you saw it at Grimsby, when after Khan got sent off and it was backs to the wall, he was just fully up for it and whatnot. And I just think his just defending and the way he reads it. What we've missed is a proper defender, and that's what McDonald is.
Oh, well, listen, Chris. I mean, I don't mind raising it. You're talking about sort of, the suggestion. Angus decided to, take exception to a few Town fans down there that were dishing it out.
Yeah,
and gave a bit back. Yeah, I mean, I remember at the time, people saying he's our skipper, he's that race, he's this, and that. Well, look, for a start, if you are going to hurl out abuse, I mean, at the start of that season, that wasn't too long after Sol Bryn was getting absolute pelters for a game. I don't know whether it was the same people, but you know what? There are people that there are some people that stand around me that say some pretty moronic things. If a line crossed, and Angus, as a very, very experienced pro who has captained teams in divisions two divisions above us, promotions, and if Angus, with all of his kind of life tribulations, has felt the need to turn around and put people back in their box, then I'm sure he's done that for very good reason. So I'll just say that for start. Do I like our players like getting stuck into our own? No, but being honest, do I like some of the stuff that I hear our own fans saying to our own players sometimes, even when times are good? No, I don't. It's always baffled me. From when I was a young kid that would be dragged down to Swindon parents and get the benefit of going to watch Swindon games, and then when I was back in London, would scrabble around and watch any kind of other London game. I would compare and contrast the behaviours of supporters of other clubs with the supporters of the club that I love, and I would go so far as to say there were times in our Premier League season where some of the comments that I heard our fans giving to our players and away players that were absolute backwoodsmen in their attitudes, and I'm talking everything from, well, again, you can just imagine. Listen, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but sometimes the stuff that comes out of our fans' mouths is utterly abhorrent. And I mean that as in, I hear stuff coming out of their mouths when times are good, when performances are okay. And I literally end up looking at these people as they leave the ground, and I sort of scratch my head and think, have you changed your opinion now? Or like, is that going to affect the way that maybe you support the club? Like, wow, like it baffles me. So listen, I don't mind addressing that, Chris. And like I said, I'll address it as rightly and as fairly as I see. But I mean, listen, like I'm with you. Listen, Angus McDonald, first and foremost, in his 11 appearances, the guy's a defender, right? The guy's a leader. And I think that the interactions with supporters was probably done in the spirit of defending his teammates. What's you've stopped short of giving him a grade though, Chris. What are you going to give him?
I'm going to give him. I mean, it was a short thing, but based on his performances and whatnot, I'm going to give him a B.
A B for Angus. Wow. Okay, Max, how about you, mate?
Yeah, I think I give him a B as well. Solid B.
Solid B. Joe?
Yeah, B's all round.
B's all round. And Ellis?
I think I'm giving him a B minus B. I think at the time I was I'd say I wasn't impressed with his performances, but I think as soon as he went out injured, we seemed real open in defence, and we seemed to be getting caught out a lot. And I think it sort of took for granted what he was actually bringing to that back line. So, yeah, I'll give him sort of a low B.
Yeah, I'm completely aligned with you, Ellis, on that. I'm a B minus for Angus. I think the thing that disappointed me really was, Angus's passing. For me, I was a little bit, I don't know, I was surprised. The defender that's dropped down, and has performed at a couple of standards above where we're at the moment, and has got pedigree as an England under 16 and England under 19 international, has had, a really decent senior career playing for some big clubs like Rotherham, Hull, Barnsley, etc. For me, I was expecting to be a little bit better with the ball at his feet. But like you, Ellis, I think when he's not been in the team, we really kind of, you really see what we've been missing. So, a B minus for me. So, listen, Angus Lees MacDonald, who couldn't sound more Scottish for an Englishman if he tried. It's hopefully a welcome back on Saturday. And hopefully a fresh injection of leadership into a side that seemed to have lost its way a little bit on Saturday just gone. A pat on the back, a bright start to your town career, but definitely must do better for a player that's got the pedigree that he's got. Right, French. Who wants to lead on Frenchie? Cool.
So, it's been. I think it's been a really tough, season for him. I think he's played a lot of games where we've not really played well, and he's not got as many. I think the thing that helped him last year was he was getting consistent minutes and he had a consistent defensive partner. I don't think he's the kind of player who responds well to an ever-changing lineup of players around him. I think last year him and Dion just bounced off each other so well, and this year I think Brennan could be a little bit erratic next to him. Same with Harry's, and I think when he's got Clayton next to him, that works because that's very similar to what it was with the Conroy partnership. Yeah. I don't know if he's even. I don't know how much he's really played with McDonald, but I think they're very similar in what they do at the back.
Yeah, earlier in the season, Max. I mean, it was like there were games where he just seemed to purr, almost like when we saw kind of the reinvigorated, kind of re-energized Frenchie at the tail end of last season. I felt that we saw a bit of that at the early stages of the season, and then obviously the Saturday Tuesday has caught up with him, and there's been injury niggles and things like this, and then he's been back out the side, and the same sort of question marks around Frenchie seem to have crept in over the last couple of weeks, and then lo and behold he goes and gets himself injured again, which is a little bit harsh in terms of my vernacular. Against Newport yesterday, which is obviously is a real blow for the guy. I mean, how are you scoring him, Max?
I think I'm giving him a D-, leaning into. I don't know. He had a good spell early October. I think between the Newport game and sort of leading up to Hartlepool when he was getting a good stretch of the team, it was all right. But I think since sort of Mansfield Stockport time, I know the whole team's been on a bit of a downturn of form, but I think I can't help but look at the way he played in the Stockport game, and it was really, really poor. And I think the rest of the defence around him reflected him. Obviously, with him being the senior member at the back there, I don't think you can play that poorly. And when you're supposed to be setting an example.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? And also, unfortunately for Frenchie, is that he is at that age where people are going to start pointing the finger and saying at 34 years old with your injury history, to what extent is this a problem? To what extent of are you able, of your legs gone? People are going to ask these questions. I heard that phrase being bounced around the stand on Saturday. It's so frustrating because when Frenchie is on song, we all know, what I mean, Frenchie's career. When he joined, when he's come over to, the UK from France, he come over from Troyes, where they've got a superbly celebrated youth academy, at Le Havre rather, and then and had played for Troyes. Then he's ended up at AFC Bournemouth, where the guy's essentially, he's decent, right? Leyton Orient fans, talk to Leyton Orient fans about Matt Bowdery, and the guy's an icon, but. For us, he's been so badly hampered by injury. It's just so frustrating because there's been games where, like I say, he's looking like he's going to purr through it. But then you think, he's either going to be prone to an absolute rick or there's going to be an injury pop up. And again, it's just sort of like, at the end of last season, you were hoping he'd have the captain's armband this year and he would lead us to promotion. That was the kind of stuff that he was saying at the back end of last year he wanted to happen. But yeah, I
think the best way to describe Matt Bowdery is that after 17 minutes of a behind closed doors friendly against Newport, he's got off injured.
Yeah,
that's the way you describe him.
At a time where you really need the reliable squad, you really need reliable centre backs because our centre backs are dropping like flies. You end up again, with him breaking down with injury, and Frenchie's come out and openly said this will be his last season as a pro. So you know that's a proper injury, because he'll play through niggles now, knowing that he's only got so much football left in the tank. So again, that's going to be a proper injury. You know, that's not even like, oh, niggle, I'm just taking it easy. Like, that is like, no. You know, unless, of course, it was a bit of a niggle when he's got half an eye on Saturday, which is, again, is a very, very different conversation altogether. But yeah, I make you right, Joe. What, Joe? How are you scoring him? So obviously Max has gone in hard there, and he's essentially given him a D-E. Where are you at?
Yeah, I love Frenchie, but based on this season, you can't give him more than a D. I don't think, just purely because even when he has been available, we've had players ahead of him in the pecking order. Don't get me wrong, I think he's massive for the dressing room. I think having an experienced head, especially with other than Angus, the defenders in our squad are quite young. So having that know-how and that experience, and I mean, he's a popular bloke within the team as well and with the staff, he's vital to have. On the pitch, he's not been sort of digging up any trees, has he? So yeah, probably a D/D-.
How about you, champ?
Yeah, exactly the same as Joe. A D. Just hasn't really settled in this season. So yeah, a D for me.
Yeah, it'd be a D for me as well. What about you?
Well, the thing with that as well is to highlight as well is we saw how and I think the thing that makes it even worse is how good he was at the back end of last season.
Yeah, exactly that.
And then certain games here, some of the errors at the back were horrendous. I mean, one in particular against Hartlepool, when he's playing balls like that, what was he thinking? I'm just, and it just puts us in trouble. I can't give him any more than a D.
That's the thing, Chris, isn't it? When you see errors like that, you know, like that is a lapse in concentration. That's nothing to do with injury. That is just like literally somebody whose head's just not where it needs to be at that point in time. So, wow. Okay. Well, Matthew, Marianne, Jelaine Bowdery, we are unfortunately in the unfortunate position of saying, as one of the classroom leaders, you've really got to be doing better. But at the same time, you kind of know that he really wants to do better. But nonetheless, he is going to be leaving this parents' evening with a bit of a flea in his ear. But hopefully with a kind of forlorn look from the teacher as he walks out the door, knowing exactly what that lad could be bringing to the table, but just doesn't seem to be doing at the moment.
He's in year 11. He's done his exams. He's just at that period where you're 2 days a week. You're probably most of the time you're on lunch playing football. He's clocked out.
Well, an interesting summary, but yeah. I hate to say you're right, Joe, but I suspect you possibly are. All right. Well, listen. Let's move into. I think it would be a little bit unfair of us to try and give Harrison Minturn a score, although he appears on our list. But we'll give Minturn a little nod, and we'll say just purely based on Chippenham exploits alone, that he'll get a not applicable, but maybe a little bit of an encouraging thumbs up from us. You know, ultimately, cup appearances this year, Tim Pot Cup appearances where the whole squad hasn't really turned out. I don't know. It kind of feels a bit harsh to be giving him a score. But
yeah, I think it's probably one we should just skip over because it's like I give someone before N/A. I think.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's the minnow goat. So listen, we want to give the minnow goat at least a little nod, and we know that you're tomorrow's man, minnow. We know you're tomorrow's man.
Yeah, he's certainly one of our. He's a very good prospect.
Yes, indeed.
And a shout out for his FA Cup exploits this season with Chippenham as well.
Exactly that, which is why we're even talking about him as we go, Max. Why we're even bothering at that and the fact he's the minnow goat. But all right, but listen, last but potentially not least, because a couple of weeks ago he turned in a performance where I was like, hang on a second, and he looked physically a very, very different specimen as well to what we saw at the start of the season, which suggested to me that there were possibly fitness issues behind his erratic form. Was a certain Cian Harries. Again, unfortunate recently with injury. Broke back into the side over the last couple of weeks, and then has then been hampered by injury again, and unfortunately then back out the side, which seems to be a really cruel blow. What do you guys make of Cian Harries? Because he's obviously arrived with. He himself is fighting back at the Rovers fans that were putting the boot in on us. So, but then that sort of like aroused the suspicions of Town fans that, hang on a minute, have we been sold a pup? Dave Hockaday, no less, about 6 weeks ago, was heard talking about Cian Harries as from their time together at Coventry, and saying that he was the big hope, the Rolls Royce footballer that everybody was saying is going to have a big future in the game. And then he's gone and got himself a decent move off to Swansea, and then seems to sort of lose his way. And he's ended up at Bristol Rovers when Rovers are throwing the money around a bit. And he's just like not delivered there. And then obviously he's come up the four. He's joined us. I would go so far as to say I've seen 3/4 of a really exciting performance from a centre-back. But that aside, everything else I've seen, it's actually pretty concerning. Where and doesn't necessarily fill you full of confidence. I mean, I'm sitting there going, well, based on what I've seen so far, in terms of not being able to complete games because of injury, and then some sort of like erratic defending mixed with some sublime defending, I'm looking at the D- territory. Where are you guys at?
I think when he came in here, he was on a hide into nothing, because he came in here and basically he had a poor pre-season. I think we can accept that. But I can't remember what game against. Was it Tranmere? He came in, was Tranmere? And I thought he played really well against Tranmere. And then he was winning a lot in the air early on against Crewe, but then obviously he got injured. But there was some of the lower games, the Pizza Cups, and he looked horrendous in those. So it's a balance there, and I think I'm going to have to give a D.
A D for you, so a D for me, D for you, Chris. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'd go D as well. Haven't really got much to say about Harry's. Not said him too much. Wasn't impressed, first of all, but I think, Chris said the Tranmere game, he did look quite good. So, yeah, I'm happy with a D.
A D for you, Joe. Max, how about you, mate?
Yeah, again, I revert back on the poor pre-season, but I think he's sort of recovered okay from that and a few bad performances in the Pizza Trophy. And, like you say, Tranmere decent, Crew, can't say too much. I'd go D sort of D+.
D+. And how about you, champ?
I feel bad for the guy. I'm giving him a C. I think there's a good player in there, and I really do think he's a good player. I think the moment he signed for us, people were slagging him off. And I think we all know it. So, some Swindon supporters are just negative and just look for the negatives and everything. And the moment he signed for us, I think he was a good excuse to moan, basically. But I genuinely think he's had some cracking performances, putting some like whoppers of a challenge, and I think it's just a case down to minutes and just getting that ring rust off and just playing more football. And I wouldn't say he's played horribly. Obviously, he hasn't had the best start, but again, like many players in the side, they just need minutes, and so I'm giving them a low C.
Well, look, I'll give you a glass half full picture on Cian Harries then. So essentially, this season, just for a bit of perspective, he's had 5 starts and 2 sub appearances. We're talking about a guy that's got Welsh under 21, under 20, under 19, and under 17 appearances under his belt. A youth career that takes into account Aston Villa and Coventry City, and a senior career that includes appearances for Coventry, but also loan spells at Cheltenham, a trial at Liverpool, no less, Swansea City, loaned out to the Eredivisie with Fortuna Sittard obviously in the Netherlands. Bristol Rovers, well, sorry, but everyone's allowed at least one mistake in their life. And then obviously the glorious Red Robins of Swindon Town. Now, listen, that on paper is the almost like the epitome of the Moneyball signing, the underexploited gem. So Rovers fans can say what they like. That the pedigree alone tells you, as Ellis is saying, there is a player in there. We have seen little glimpses of it, and I've got to stress that his penultimate performance in a Town shirt at the county ground, I genuinely looked and was like, wow, okay, now I don't just think it was his haircut, but there was a certain kind of, it was almost like a complete refresh and reset. That, he's got a big opportunity here. He looked fitter, he looked leaner, he looked more commanding. The opening goal, everyone pointed fingers at him and said, well, that was all down to you. But I thought he recovered really well, as Ellis said, put in a couple of absolutely superb challenges. But as Ellis was saying, we are a supporter base that love a whipping boy. And essentially, Rovers have kind of given us a certain sort of portion of our supporter base everything they need to get on the guy's back. Me personally, I'm not of an opinion where I just want to hammer Harry's. Again, I look at his pedigree and just think I'd much rather be positive about him and try and tempt that, whatever that player is, just try and tempt that out of him. Whether or not we're going to see it, but whether injuries are going to let us see it or not is a different matter. But look, let's move into the midfield, because that pretty much covers off the defence. But I would say that in closing, Cian Harries, as I look from across my teacher's desk at you and wag my cane at you, I'll be saying you are my star pupil that quite clearly has taken his early promise to heart and has stopped, has essentially stopped delivering the goods in the class. Slap, slap, slap. Make it work, son. Big fat D. You're not getting in the sixth form. Work it out. Look, moving on to midfield. He's just back from Doha. Who wants to say a word about Johnny Williams?
What letter comes before A?
Go on.
I think he's been our player of the season by far this season. He's been absolutely brilliant. He's going to drive us on. And over the last Tranmere crew, Crawley, he's been exactly what we missed. I mean, well, look at that game against Mansfield as well. He's just that driving force. I mean, it's like him and Jack Payne from last season is what this team really misses. But Johnny Williams has been outstanding this season, so he gets A++.
How about this for a stat for you, Chris? So in all of last season, Johnny Williams managed 26 starts. In this season alone, Johnny's already racked up 15 starts and a sub appearance, and he's managed to get himself on the plane to Qatar for the World Cup. Like, if that is not like somebody that is enjoying an absolute renaissance of a career, then quite frankly, I don't know what is. I think we're probably guilty of overplaying his importance in terms of our downturning form. And I think we talked about Angus and we talked about some of the other players in the squad. And I think I would hate to hang all of our hopes on Johnny returning. It's easy to do that, obviously, when you've got a player coming back from a World Cup. But I think the thing that's really pleased me about Johnny Williams this season is with the World Cup on the horizon, Johnny's football just seemed to get better and better and better the closer we got to the tournament. So he knew that he was playing for his place on the plane. But he wasn't worried about getting injured. Like, he just absolutely went all guns blazing. Now, whether that was because he was realistic about how many appearances he was likely to make in Doha, that's a different matter. But credit to Johnny, his style of play, he does take a lot of heavy knocks in games, but his influence just seemed to grow and grow and grow, didn't it? I mean, Max, how impressed were you with Johnny's form so far this season?
Well, yeah, it's quality. Like, I think that he's just part of that spine of our team. I think it's like, obviously, Bryn, McDonald, himself, Khan, and you probably argue it's been Jeff Cart just with the goals he's given us, but he just plays such an important role, links up the midfield and the attack so well, and then has chipped in with, what is it? I think he's got 6 goals for us in the league and a couple of assists.
Yep.
So, like...
He got 5 goals, Max, all of last season. Yeah, he's our top scorer at the moment. It's impressive.
Yeah, you can't argue with his numbers. And just, I think also, I know he's described it in the Welsh squad as like the sort of vibes coordinator, or however they want to say it, but I think you can tell that the rest of the squad love him as well. and I think he just brings all the pieces together really well.
Yeah, we're very, very lucky. If Wales see him as it's quite clear that he's got exactly the same sort of like affection. He's held in exactly the same levels of affection amongst the Swindon Town squad as well, which is obviously fantastic to see as one of our senior pros. And no doubt his return is going to be a fresh injection that league that maybe we've been missing for the last couple of weeks. But I mean, here's a big question for you, Joe. Do you think that we are doing enough as a club to keep Johnny and keep him satisfied with what it is he's trying to get out of football? Bearing in mind the World Cup's now out of the way, so it's not like he needs to get games under his belt in order to play for Wales at next year's World Cup. We've got all of next year, and then you've got the following year before you're even going to be looking at the Euros. Potentially a managerial change, given how dismal Wales were at the World Cup, to be confirmed. What do you think we're going to keep Johnny beyond this season?
You'd like to think so. I think we need to get promoted sooner rather than later, just to give him that extra platform of, right, we're now a League One club where you've spent a lot of your career plying your trade. We need to get promoted. Whether that's this year, if we can get him next year, it needs to be next year. It needs to happen at some point. I mean, you can't say much more. I mean, you guys have all covered it over there. He's an international footballer who's played at the World Cup. He went to the World Cup this year, and he's in League Two, which is just not right, really. I think he's one of two players in League Two who went to a World Cup. Like, that shouldn't be happening. He's better than our sort of current standing.
All right,
we're very lucky to have him. And he's better than any trophy we've ever had. And Johnny's got a little ginger beard as well. And trophies don't have those.
You literally sound like Coach Nimley. You sound like you should be speaking with a Ghanaian accent.
Oh, well, we'll get cancelled.
All right. Well, let's give me your gradings, guys.
A
for Joe.
A star.
Oh, A star for Max. Max is well and truly in love. Chris.
I already give you mine. A++.
A++, of course you did. And Champ, how about you?
Yeah, I'm giving him an A. I don't think it's a coincidence that sort of our form has dropped a little bit since he's been out of the side, and I think it's showing that we're missing him in the side. So yeah, an A.
Well, for me, solid A for the boy born and bred in Kent, just down the road from my current base where I'm sat. And yeah, I mean, listen, what's not already been said. A catalyst of a footballer, it's fair to say, and one of the lads that, despite the departure of several players that all bounced off each other last year, in McCurdy and Payne, and to an extent Egbo. It's been amazing watching Johnny Williams kind of accept the challenge of being one of the senior pros, and being one of the kind of like really important players in Scott Lindsay's sort of tactical setup this year. I can't wait to see him back in the Town shirt on Saturday. Solid A for me. So Jonathan Peter Williams, this teacher, is standing up from behind his desk, reaching across the table and offering a bear hug to you, and congratulations to your parents for creating such a fine human being. Now, next one is going to be a very, very interesting debate, because we have a certain Louis Reed, who pleasingly back into the starting lineup on Saturday. One of last season's standout performers, not just for Swindon Town, but across the league per se. This season, clearly he has had his struggles. Lots of rumours bounding around the stands as to why those might be. Who wants to go first on young Mr. Reed?
I'll go first.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Go on.
I think he has had a tough time, and I don't think he's deserved sort of the stick that he's had. It's safe to say he hasn't had sort of the same sort of standard of performances that he did last season, but I wouldn't say he's played terribly. or certainly as near as bad as fans are saying he's been playing. I think what a lot of fans is comparing him to last season, which obviously he's not up to that standard and level that he was playing at last season. But like I said, he's not playing bad. But yeah, so I think the stick that he's getting probably isn't justified. Well, not justified, but yeah, I don't know if you know what I'm trying to say, but I think he's been playing better than what people have been making out. So I'm giving him a C, maybe a high D, considering he hasn't really got into the starting lineup.
Here, Ellis, tell you
I
what,
think.
I think this season the biggest issue that you're going to have, and again, like, you know, this is, I'm not speaking from an informed standpoint, right? This is just me sort of speculating. But you've got a player that put in the level of performances that Louis put in last season, which were streets above most other League Two footballers. All right, that can't be debated. Like, the guy was an absolute maestro. The issue that you've got, obviously, off the back of that, is that you're going to get increased attention. Now, the joy in everyone's eyes when it was revealed that Louis was on a 2-year deal and that he was going to be around this season was absolutely palpable. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that, well, that now means that Louis got a whole bunch of additional pressures, because he's essentially, what's he playing for? He's in the final year of his deal. So he's not got the security beyond this season, which I'm sure he's going to want. So, you know, if you get, you know, you pick up look at the position he plays. He plays a really combative sort of position on the pitch, which, you know, means that he could be liable to pick up a serious injury. You know, the guy absolutely brutalizes tackles. You know, like, absolute. It's interesting. I asked one of the boys who's the toughest player in the dressing room, and without even batting an eyelid, he went, "Oh, mate, hardest player at Swindon Town by a mile is Louis Reed." So that kind of tells you, you know, what he's putting in right now. Again, he's in the final year of a deal, so he's playing. You know, he's not got the security of a kind of 3-year contract where, you know, if anything goes horribly wrong, he's got that cover. But potentially, he's also, whether we like to admit it or not, he's playing for a team in League Two, and we know that he's capable of operating further up the leagues. There are going to be scouts at our games that are going to want to sign him. That comes with its own pressures. At the end of the day, let's not forget, we're talking about human beings here. Whether we like it or not, they'll be as professional as they like. But there are things that are going to trigger you, me. There are stresses in that guy's life that are going to trigger him. And I genuinely believe that the whole fog around Louis Reed at the moment is, I just putting my business head on, it just smacks of contractual issues. So for me, I think the sooner you get those sorted and the sooner you give that guy some clarity and security one way or another, I can't help but think you're going to see the Louis Reed of old back out on the pitch. Do I, you know, at the end of the day, listen, for all I know, he could be carrying a knock. You know, for all I know, it could just be the fact that he hasn't got the outlets that he had last season. You know, the ready passes, you know, the relief balls out to the likes of Jack Payne that, you know you can play those and the balls are going to stick. You know, now you've got, you know, Saidu Khan taking up different positions, or Ben Gladwin even taking up different positions because of the, you know, the change in impact in games that he's having. And, you know, Johnny Williams playing in a different position to what he was playing last year. Now Louis releasing the ball to a completely different tactical setup. So Louis basically had his kind of Swindon Town world turned on its head at a time where he's probably got a lot of admiring eyes, and that is going to be probably quite a disorientating sort of position to be in, I would say. It's a real shame for me because Louis last year is like A++, you know, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, the nature of trying to perform with all of that added baggage that I think I'm speculating he's carrying means that we're getting a C-D out of Louis at the moment, if we're lucky. And I hate saying that because I was saying last week, you can't have a player like Louis Reed sat on the bench in League Two. Like, I'm sorry, like, it is a crime that you've got a player of his ability and he's sitting on the bench in League Two and you're bringing him off in the 96th minute to take a free kick. Like, that is a travesty. It is a tragedy for all concerned.
Could I just butt in, Hannah's?
Yeah.
Like you said, I have been really disappointed that he hasn't really even started, and I personally I'd pick him over Saidu Khan in the Louis Reed position all day every day. I would like to see him being played more, and personally, if I was brought on in the 96 minutes to take a free kick, I wouldn't be happy.
No. Well, look, James Van, all the way from Florida, has contacted us. James, hello, mate. Good evening to you. James is saying, personally, I think that Reedy's just been deflated, that he wasn't part of the crew that jumped ship to Charlton. Yeah, interesting, James, because I think the only real links to Charlton in the summer were kind of sort of generated by Swindon, and those are all being thrown around kind of petulantly while they were coming in and just, plucking all of our best players. I think with Garner gone at Charlton, I think you haven't got hope in hell of Louis Reed going to Charlton now. I genuinely can't see that. So I think, I get where you're coming from, and I think that your comment's probably a little bit sort of half tongue in cheek. But it's an interesting one nonetheless. I mean, I think, to be honest, I think it's more a case of, it must be pretty hard, like losing your best mates. That was obviously, they were a really tight crew, weren't they, last year? You'll remember that picture where they were all out fancy dress in London. And think about the personalities that were in that picture. Obviously, Johnny's still here, but that picture also included Jack, Dion Conroy, I'm trying to remember who else was in that. Macca.
Jordan Lydon.
Sorry, mate.
I think Jordan Lydon was in that picture.
Yeah, Jordan Lydon, Macca. So, like any workplace, if you lose your best mates and you're still being asked to kind of go and do the job that, of course, they're professionals. We can be brutal and go, but at the same time, let's be realistic. We are talking about League Two footballers here, So, hey, listen, kind of is what it is. But look, like I said, for me, it's a real shame. Like what I've seen of Reedy this year, there's a real contrast in his performances from the A-star that Chris is giving Johnny Williams, superlatives based on obviously the opportunities he's had this year. For me, it's a C-. What about you, Joe? Where are you at? Sorry, Ellis. Let's have a score from you, pal.
It's a tough one. I'd give him a low C.
A
low C, so probably similar boat to me. What about you, Joe?
I think obviously seeing at the time we've got half the squad to go through still, so I'll try and keep mine short and sweet. We all know what a footballer Reedy is. We know what he's about. The fact that Ellis has literally described the number 6 position as the Louis Reed position says it all. He hasn't done amazingly this season. He started off fairly poorly, got taken out of the side, and he struggled to get back in. I don't think you can give anything below a D. I think that's harsh because he plays in the Louis Reed position. He's made that position his own, and I'm absolutely certain we'll see moving forward he'll make it, his position again, and he'll prove us all wrong. We'll be giving him B's and A's at the end of the season. He actually had a really good first half against Crawley. Second half, he should have scored at the start of the second half. We probably win that game if he scores. I'll give him a D. In short, I'll give him a D. I think he'll improve. He will improve. He's got the ability.
How about you, Max?
Yeah, I think the thing that's crept into his game this season is just a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes. And I think, like, with the high standards he set last season, I think that's probably something that might be frustrating him as well. I think once he cuts out the mistakes, I think he can get back to his best. We've still got a whole chunk of the season for him to win his, looks like, get back into team and get back to his best. But based on the season far, I think D+. But he knows he can do better.
Max, it's an interesting one because obviously you're talking about mistakes, but is it just me that he's seeing playing with like that an extra element? When I've seen him, when he's been playing, he's been playing with a real kind of extra sort of fiery element to his game. I mean, he's always had that combative element to his game, but I don't know whether it's just something I'm picking up on or whether it's something I've noticed that was there last year, but he just seems to be a lot angrier this year.
Yeah, I think that's just through frustration. I think he knows he can do better. He probably knows. Look what I was doing last season. Now I can't even get in. Now I'm struggling to get 90 minutes together. I think a lot of frustration is probably just built up with him. That's probably what's led to stuff like him being a bit fiery in games, getting a few more bookings, and making mistakes.
Mm.
But I've got faith in him to come back strong because we know how good a player he is.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, we'll move along swiftly. So Louis Reed, listen, it's one of those where he's the kid in the classroom. He's lost his way a little bit. He was last year's darling. And all we're imploring, I'm sat here as your teacher, Louis. I'm imploring you. Please rediscover what you gave us last year, because by Christ, what a change in our performances that will be, because a fit Louis Reed runs that team. And a fit and happy Louis Reed, is transformative. Saidu Khan. So interesting story at the start of the season. We were at Woking, where we spoke to a couple of club officials that told us that they had signed a player who is going to become a cult hero very, very quickly at Swindon Town, and his name is Saidu Khan. And we kind of politely smiled at each other, Joe and I, but in reality, as we walked to the car park, we said neither of us have got a bloody clue who that is. Saidu Khan, for me, this season, it's been a sort of a bit of an up and down tale in that I don't think he's massively blown my socks off when he's played as an 8. The gaffer clearly likes him as a central defensive midfielder, and there has been comments about the Khan turn and how he kind of has managed to sort of turn himself out of trouble at points this season, and it's done a decent enough job. But for me, delightful lad. Certainly giving us something that, I mean, he's I don't think there's anyone else in the squad that quite does what Saidu Khan does, but for me, he's one of those players where you kind of feel that he's got 6 gears, but he's stuck in third. So I mean, I could talk about Saidu Khan, but all I would say is that I kind of feel that there is so much more to come from him. And Saturday was almost like how I feel about Saidu Khan in a nutshell, because I went into that game going, this is one of those games where Saidu Khan is now going to be free to get forward up the pitch and destroy, score a goal, just run the game. And it just didn't happen for him. And then he's ended up getting clattered and going off injured. For me, Saidu Khan's season thus far has been a solid C. And I'll pass this on to whoever wants to run with it.
Well, the one thing for me, and the biggest question, and I think we've had over the last 6 to 8 weeks, is the Khan versus Reed. Can they play in the same team? Now, I'll try and put my view on that there. When Khan was at his most effective for Chesterfield last year, he was playing higher up the pitch, and we've utilised him in that defensive position. Now, I'm not sure that's his best position, and it's frustrating there, because we know how good Reed's been, and obviously Reed's not had the best season, but Ahmed Field is more than anything, is I think what's held us back this year, and we just need to find what's there. When Williams is there, we've got that driving force, but when Williams wasn't there, I would have loved to have seen Khan playing further up the field to perform that role.
Yeah, the Jack Reed role. So hit me with a score, Chris.
Sorry. Oh, for Khan, I can't give him any more than a C.
A C for you. Max, have a score from you, pal.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd give him a C.
A C. Champ?
Yeah, it's a C for me as well. Look strong on the ball. He's good on the half turn. And I think there's plenty more to see from him. So, a C.
A C. And you, Joe?
Yeah, C as well, mate.
I've got a feeling that Saidu Khan, as I glare over my teacher's spectacles at you from across my desk, that there's a lot more to come from you, young man. And I'm hoping that you well and truly find your League 2 feet, and the second half of the season is yours to own. But at the moment, there's a little bit of flattering to deceive, and we haven't quite got to the cult hero stakes that have been sold to me pre-season. Nonetheless, there's still enough there for me to know that there is a baller. Next player we're going to move on to is Ben Gladwin. So at the start of the season, if you told me that Ben Gladwin was going to pitch up at Swindon Town this season at this stage of his career with his injury history and was able to shrug off 5 kilos and ping around some of the passes and get around the pitch as well as he had, I would have told you, you're absolutely bonkers. And that last season's whipping boy had quite clearly, prior to his injury on Saturday, for me, been arguably our player of the season, debatable. So I'm just going to nip it in the bud there and give, for the interest of time, but also because that's the biggest compliment I can give him. Like, he's come back and he's performing in the same way that he was back in 2015. He looks completely reborn. He's absolutely determined. You can see that he's busting a gut for us when he plays. He seems to have really sort of cut down on the number of silly mistakes that he was making that got a lot of people on his back last year when he would constantly be caught dilly-dallying on the ball. For me, Ben Gladwin's season this year is a without a shadow of a doubt. But what's my panel say? Who wants to run first?
I mean, Gladwin's been absolutely brilliant this year, and I took a friend of mine actually to the Crew game last week, which is probably not the best game to take a mate to, but and he came along having not watched football for 15 years, and he just said to me that number 7 is pretty good, and I think that says it all.
Yeah, solid.
But he's a different player to what we had when he was before. He's not that dynamic guy who's going to ping them into the top corner from 30 yards. But he's more of a guy who dictates the play. And
the thing is, Chris, if you look at this season, so similarly to Johnny Williams, so this season Ben Gladwin's already got 20 starts, and he's at the back of the net the once, which is arguably a little bit disappointing if you reflect on his goal output from starts last year. The last year, Ben Gladwin had 23 starts and 15 sub-appearances, 5 goals. So for me to have already comfortably racked up 20 appearances versus last year's 23 starts, so 20 starts versus 23 starts, I think is admirable. And he's being used less on that kind of rotational basis. You know, him and Willow have almost got to a stage where people were going they couldn't play together. Now they're absolutely saying that they can. So I think that's really positive. But what are you scoring him, mate?
Well, also the thing with Gladwin, he's playing deeper because obviously the only goal he scored this year, if I'm not mistaken, was a penalty at Mansfield. He's playing deeper because he's controlling it more. But what am I scoring him? I'm going to score him B++.
Fair dues. Joe, how about you, mate?
Yeah, I'd go B+ as well. Obviously, he's kind of the heartbeat of the side, isn't he? We do really miss him when he's not around. Yeah, I'd be happy with B+.
A B+, solid. How about you, Max?
Yeah, B+. I know he's not got the goals, but he's contributing more assists in the team and is making the team tick in midfield. So yeah, B+.
B+. Right, you are. And Champ, how about you, mate?
A. I would say he's been probably our best player this season. So yeah, I'm giving him an A.
So Renee man is sent packing from this parents' evening with a warm handshake and a please can we have some more of that? You are the classroom leader, Mr. Gladwin. So yeah, congratulations. Look, moving on to our next midfielder, Ronan Darcy Baby. So at one point he was looking like he was going to be our solution at right back. And now he's our kind of more dynamic option alongside, in your centre midfield, alongside either your Ben Gladwin or your Johnny Williams. And Mansfield seemed to be sort of suggesting he finally got his shooting range and that he was going to become a real threat. And in the games preceding, things have all gone a little bit kind of disappointing. In many ways, Ronan Darcy, for me, has typified or has symbolised Swindon Town. So his performances are almost like the issues that we're facing in a nutshell. Nonetheless, to pick a lad like him up on a free and to see the levels of promise that we've had from him so far, I am giving Ronan Darcy a B- for services so far this season. Joe, I'll come to you first on Ronan Darcy.
Yeah, he's been inconsistency is probably the word that you'd use, isn't it? I think we've all seen that he's got the ability. He's exciting. He's dynamic on the field. He coming on at Crawley, I think for the first 10 minutes of the second half, you could really see that he'd upped our game moving forward. As I said, Reedy scores that goal at 0-0. We probably win 2 or 3-0, I reckon. When he's on game, I think we win games, football. And I think that says a lot about of how influential he can be on our team. So, having said that, mixed in with inconsistency, probably go for a C plus B.
A C plus B. So you're probably in the same kind of territory as me. What about you, Ellis? Where are you at with Ronan Darcy?
I'd agree with you both. A C. There's been glimpses of real good football from Darcy, and it's frustrating because if he played like that, sort of every game, he would be sensational. But there's just a lot of times in the game he makes silly decisions and quite often it's positional sort of errors. But one thing I love about Darcy is just the motor that he's got on him and just the drive that he has. He's constantly running. He's like Wakelin, just constantly running and just doesn't stop. And that's a big part. Sort of, I think when we've been caught out on the transition is because we're too slow and we're not putting the challenge in. And I think that's one of the reasons why Darcy is a good player. So I'm giving him a C.
Football fans want grunt and effort, basically, Ellis, don't they? And I think we get that in the bucket loads from Darcy.
100%.
What about you, Max?
Yeah, I think he's been a solid runner in midfield. The only thing I want to see is just a few more goal contributions, but other than that, he's been he's a solid player that mixes into the midfield well, I reckon. I'll give him a C plus.
A C plus. So I think, have I got everyone's scores out of you there for Ronan Darcy?
Apart from me.
Oh, go on, Chris.
Well, I would actually agree with the C. And one of the biggest things about Darcy is inconsistency. And he takes a lot of shots, but I haven't seen the accuracy of them. But I would like to think about 10% of them are probably on target. And that's the biggest argument there. Is sometimes he's very side to side and not really dynamic enough. Now, for me, what I would think of Darcy as is a project. There's a player in there. It just needs to be directed a bit more.
Yeah, so basically we want to see him skipping past the central defensive midfielder and getting a shot away, Chris, is what we're saying. So where are you at grade-wise, mate?
C.
And I'll just chip in sound trauma. Thank you very much. A B minus for his hair. Personally, I can't comment, but I understand your input. Okay, so Ronan Thomas Darcy, young man, you've got off to a bright start. You've dazzled in glimpses, but there, as to quote Chris directly, a good educational word. There is a solid project in you. But yeah, we need to see more. You've got the opportunity to become a real catalyst in this side. We want to see more of it. We won't spend too much time on the remaining two members of the team because we've not really seen that much of them. Friend of the show, Tyrese Shade's been on, so we'll talk about Tyrese. I mean, you listen. For me, it's an interesting one, Tyrese Shade, because Walsall fans will tell you his best football was played, interestingly, as a left wing back. Now, when we start the season with a 5-3-2, you would expect, well, that's manna from heaven for him. And then we're seeing him deployed as a right wing back, and we're seeing him scoring goals from that position in pre-season. What I have seen from him this season kind of, again, smacks of a player that has been moved around the pitch, moved around positions. He's played as a centre forward. We've seen him play down the middle. We've seen him played out wide. And I just don't think that the manager has necessarily put his arm around his shoulder and said, right, you are going to play here and here alone. and you're my man, you're going to start, Bosh, go for it. Sort of strikes me as the quintessential confidence player, Tyrese Shade. And I wonder at the moment whether he's actually operating on full confidence. And obviously, the more he's moved around the pitch, the more his bearings are going to be altered, aren't they? You know, that's just kind of normal. You know, is he going to have his shooting range on if he's shifted from the centre to out wide? If he's playing centre forward to coming in from out wide and getting shots away? Yeah, that's all going to affect him. It feels to me like it's a real shame that we're seeing him kind of reduced to just a bit part substitutes role, because I think we've got a player there who's clearly a fantastic athlete, but yeah, just for me, he's not quite doing it for us at the moment. Based on appearances alone, can't give you any more than a D, really, Tyrese. Unfortunately, what about my panel? Where are their heads at, Joe? How are you sitting with Tyrese?
Yeah, mate, I'd echo your words, probably word for word. I think he's a good squad player to have. Scored the goal of the season already, so just for that, he gets the pass. But yeah, I'd probably sit with a D.
And I don't know about you, Chris, but I kind of feel that with Tyrese Shade, that if he, it just sort of feels like he's a player that could go pop, and then by Christ, we'll have a player on our hands.
Yeah, but I think the thing with him is where will that player be? We've seen him play every position, so I feel sorry for him in that way, that he's never been able to excel, not even at somersaults, but because he can. One week he's playing right wing, the next he's playing left wing, then he's playing left back, right back, centre forward. So, what chance have you got as a player when you're playing a different position like every different game?
Yeah, I mate, you're right. How about you, Max?
Yeah, he's just a decent, solid squad player. I like having him about. He's not one that's going to start all the time, but I think he's one you want coming on the wing to, whether you want to give Wakeling a rest and just have someone who'll run at him 15 minutes and will pop up with the odd goal. Solid C, decent squad player.
Well, if you're a photographer, you won't be a big fan of him, though, I reckon.
Yeah, he gives you great celebration options. But look, I mean, Tyrese Shade, like as I say, statistics pretty much underline everything we're saying. So 11 starts plus 12 substitute appearances and the 2 goals. Again, we know there's a player in there. You know, look at his pedigree. He's got clubs like Leicester City, Birmingham City, and obviously the mighty Swindon Town on his CV. So the guy knows how to pick a big club. You know, he just needs to find a spot, I guess, and have someone actually just show a bit of faith and give him a run of games. But at the moment, he's just not doing enough when he does play to kind of get the nod. Chris,
I think with Shade, I think what we need to do is like identify a position. Say, right, this is your position, and train him that way and do that, because it doesn't help any player who's moved around like that. He's got no chance to do that. You need to be a player and get that and get the positional on it.
Well, listen, a shameless name drop here. Danny Wilson, our ex sort of manager, once said to me that there is pace is comes at a premium in football, and Tyrese Shade is, I believe, one of the fastest, if not the fastest player in the squad. So, listen, kind of, we're in League Two at the end of the day. He's got a great, he's got pace to burn. Kind of feels a bit Kane Woolery, but hey, at the end of the day, Kane Woolery was an underrated asset in that promotion squad. And sometimes there are assets that I think Tyrese Shade brings to the table that may be overlooked in the same way that Kane Woolery's assets were. But give us a grade, Chris.
D.
A D. Everyone else grades? Do I get your grades from everyone else?
Not from me. I'm gonna give him a D.
A D. Yeah, I think we're all
I reckon.
right. Uniform D then. So Tyrese James Shade. Listen, boy, it's time for you to step up. Seize your opportunity when it comes along, please. Like I said, keep yourself safe when you're doing those backward flips, mate, because those look dangerous to land. We hope for more from Tyrese Shade. Listen, I would love to be able to spend more time based off what we saw last season speaking about Ricky Aguiar, but I just can't justify it. Like, we've hardly seen anything from him, and I just know, and also in the interest of time, a big fat not applicable at this stage. is quite sad for me to say, on the basis that I would have hoped, by having signed a large extension to his contract and having had, glimpses of absolute brilliance last season, that we would have had a proper central midfielder on our hands this year, but it's just not quite happened for him. So Ricky, look, we're obviously wishing you all the best, sir, young man. But listen, we need more attendance from you, is what I'm trying to say. None of this playing hooky, hiding behind the bike sheds, getting up to all kinds of things. You handsome rascal, you. We'll swiftly move on to the attack. We're not going to spend too much time because we've got a lot of attackers. I could mention Jephcott, Wakelin, Hepburn Murphy, Tommy Adeloy, Morgan Roberts, Harry Parsons. We're not going to spend, unfortunately, much time talking about Harry Parsons for the same reasons we didn't spend much time talking about Ricky Aguiar. We're not going to be doing the same thing again, talking about Rashawn Hepburn Murphy. Morgan Roberts has only been here 5 minutes, so I'm going to speak for all of you in saying I know that we all feel, because I've spoken to you all, that he is he's clearly glimpses of talent, and definitely one moving forward for the future. But at the moment, we haven't really got a lot to chew on. And again, in the interest of time, Tommy Adeloy, I think we'll have a little bit of time talking about. But before we do that, the big question around probably arguably the biggest name of the three, and Jake won't thank me for saying that, Luke Jephcott. All I'll put to you, panel, is this. January rolls round. Are you spending what will probably be a significant 5-figure sum on Luke Jephcott?
Yeah, I'd say so, because I think on the expected goals, he's pretty much matching what he's producing, and he's the sort of player you want, really. In a team like us that's going to generate a lot of chances, you want someone who's going to pounce them. I think he's the sort of ideal guy to have in the middle on his own doing that. And
Mansfield Max shows you that he's not just about hanging around in the 18-yard box, is he? Like, he really genuinely won that game for us. Like, he's
for sure.
I mean, phenomenal stuff. It was John Acklam of Total Sports Swindon that did the deep dive analysis on Jephcott's performance, and it was absolutely off the charts. His involvement in pretty much all the goals, obviously amongst the goals himself, like the guy's fantastic. But obviously, at the moment, when we're not scoring goals and he is your main goal scorer, a question is going to be asked of how you're affecting the game. The simple fact is, we're not giving the bullets to fire, are we?
No, I don't think we are, and I think that's a mixture of the sort of missing Johnny Williams, a bit of a mess around with the fullbacks, because obviously if you got Ellis there at left back, you're not going to have as much. You're not going to be as strong on that side. I think he'll get plenty of service from Cameron Hutton, and if Waitler's playing on the right, cutting in on his left, he'll get service from him as well.
Yeah,
I think once the midfield resettles itself, I think the goals will come back for him.
Well, I guess you would look at Jephcott and say, if at the moment he's pretty much a goal of the game merchant, which if you then roll that average out across the season, he's on target for hitting 20 goals this season. The fact is, unfortunately, the others around him aren't scoring as many. But give us your grade for this half-term report for Luke Jephcott, mate.
I give him a B+, strong B+.
Strong B+. How about you, Chris? Give us a grade for your boy Jephcott.
I think the one thing to say is that if you look at Jephcott's record, and over the last few games, we've just created nothing. So we're not giving him anything. So from what he's done, and when you've seen that when we are actually doing something, he's been very effective and done good. So I'm going to have to give him a B, because the fact is, any striker, even Alan Shearer, wouldn't get goals in this team.
All right, Joe, how about you, mate? Give us a grade.
Yeah, I'd probably go B as well. I think the question as well, would you sign him? I'd definitely sign him. We've got the deal in place. I think he's only young. He's younger than me, which is very odd, because I feel like he's been around for a while. Jake Wakelin is very young. Sorry, mate.
He is, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah, he looks older.
For the avoidance of doubt, he's 22 years old. So that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's mad. So Tommy Adeloy hasn't done anything. I think he's probably surplus the requirements, if I'm being honest. It's literally Jake and Luke, and they're both two young, really young lads. I honestly, in January, I think you've got to bring in an experienced head up top. I think you've got to bring in an experienced head probably in goal, and then maybe you find some youngsters or you find some talent, maybe one in defence, one in midfield, just to bolster the squad. But Luke, I think if Luke can learn off of someone, I think if he can continue to develop, we've got a real asset. And if we've got a deal in place to sign him, I think you take it.
Grading then?
B.
A B. Ellis, grading from you, pal.
Yeah, a B. I match what Joe said.
Right, you are. Well, I'm going to give Luke a B minus. From my perspective, I think there are too many games where he is anonymous, and I just don't see him getting as involved in the game as I would like. Now, you could argue at the end of the day, listen, he's a goal scorer. The guy should be in the 18-yard box looking to get on the end of chances. And, yeah, that's a fair point. And what I will say is that, as I say, a goal every other game based on his current record, that is not a bad return. You mentioned him already, and it brings us to our kind of penultimate striker of the night, which is Jake Wakelin. So 18 starts, 2 sub-appearances, 5 goals. He's 21 years of age, and he's joined us from Leicester City. He is the darling of many a Swindon Town fan. But somebody step in, give me a grading for your Jake Wakelin.
I'd go B.
A.
Like Jephcott.
Oh, B's an A. Hello.
I'd say an A just because he's contributing with goals and assists. I think he's probably the hardest working at that front three, and he does make things tick. And I think if you've got him full confidence mode and firing, then he's going to get us probably 20 goal contributions around the rest of the season.
Okay, Max has changed my mind. You've tickled my tummy, Max. Yeah.
I think, listen,
you know, it makes sense.
As football fans, we love to see a player busting a gut, and I think that's what Jake gives you. The fact is that, you know, if you look at just how hard he presses and how hard he is on himself as well, like he's very, very, very tough on himself. I'm with you, Max. I think, you know, just look at his statistics at the moment. I think as the season goes on, if things, you know, if we can get back to some kind of formula, we can get our leaders back in the team and things start ticking away again. I can see where you're going in terms of him being a 15 to 20 goal striker. If Luke Jephcott stays in the side, picks up 20 goals, you add Jake Wakelin's goal return. That's not bad. It needs to be better. I mean, the partnership's clearly not clicked. I think part of that is that, you know, when they get played in a front three, Jake gets pushed out onto the wing. And he's not a winger, is he? He's not a crosser of the ball. He wants to be in the box on the end of chances, or he wants to be pressing to create chances of his own. So I think the systems that we're playing don't really help him much at the moment. But I'm giving Jake a solid B plus, and he's only just missing out on an A based on a low goal return at the moment for a player that occupies forward areas for me. So a solid B plus for me with Jake Wakelin.
I'm going to like early in the season, he was great and whatnot, and I absolutely love him. I love the way he presses, love to chase everything. And when he gets the ball deep and he runs, he scares defenders. That's great. And very much similar to what Mark says, is his low goal return is the only reason I'll probably drop him a little bit below. But I think if we play him left and right, I think we waste his attributes. So I'm going to give him a B minus.
A B minus. Well, MST's been on to us again, who draws attention to the fact that he seems to have gone off the ball since getting a 3-year contract. Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I think that kind of he's dropping in form does seem to coincide with that contract being signed. At the same time, I think it also kind of coincides with us picking up Jephcott, if I'm going to be really honest. Because Jephcott's come in as our main and is playing as, you know, as almost like the number 9. And Jake's been pushed in as like more of a supporting act. The Yates to his Doyle, if you get my meaning. So I would say I don't know. I don't think he's the kind of I think you can see in his work rate, MST. I think he busts his ass. I don't think he's got his contract and he's sitting pretty. I think, he puts himself through the ringer 90 minutes. I think the guy sweats blood for us. So, yeah, it's interesting timing, but I think that's more of a coincidence than anything else. Who's not giving us a grade for Jakey?
Well, before that, was just something else to throw out there. What do we think of the Jeffcott and Wakeland partnership? Does it work, or do they work together, or would they be better off not playing together?
I think they do.
I think it's best when if you've got him and Johnny playing just off of Jeffcott, so they're slightly wide, but they're drifting centrally. I think that's probably the best way it works, because them two will go all over the place and get goals themselves. But yeah, as a winger, I think it does nullify Wakeling a bit. So I'd play him sort of closer, but playing just off Jeffcott centrally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the only way that I can see that working, Max. To be totally frank, I don't really like to see him in a front three, because I just think he just gets sort of pushed out in the positions he doesn't need to be in. I think he ends up drifting very, very wide, and I don't know. I just don't really think that's the one. But no, I do. I think that the thing is, a lot of it, I think at the moment is just they're both, when they play together, they're both sort of youthful. Just echo what Joe was saying. I think an experienced head coming in January, with a little bit of know-how, I think is probably what both of them would benefit from, to be totally frank. All right, well, so Jake seems to be kind of picking up. He's either an A or he's a kind of B+ sort of territory mark. Has anyone not given us a grade?
Myself, I'm giving him an A. I think he's been one of our better players this season. He's constantly running. He does not stop. Scored some good goals, and yeah, I think there's more to come. Just obviously a lot of the time being played out of position, but yeah, I'm giving him an A.
Listen, right, our final player for the night really, really, so it kind of baffles me a bit, because I don't genuinely believe that we've seen enough of this guy to kind of form a judgment, but yet universally, Town fans are absolutely brutal in their criticism of him, which is, of course, Tommy Adeloye. Now, obviously, Tommy started the season. He's come down from Scotland. He's scored a load of goals for Ayr. A big number 9. Has come up through the academy system in English football before finding his way up in Scotland. It just became very, very apparent after the Stockport game, I think it was, where almost universally every comment on socials about him just suddenly was massively negative. And me personally, I just sort of sat there scratching my head saying, well, I don't know what it is that people are seeing that are essentially kind of writing him off before we've even started. And then I stood there on Saturday when he came off the bench, and almost immediately he was getting pelters from the Town fans. There was like high ball up into the box. He's gone for a header, didn't win it. And everybody was slaughtering him. So I'm going to put it to you, panel, because I genuinely don't know the answer to this. What is it about Tommy Adeloye that seems to not float the Town fans' boat?
I don't. I want to give him a chance. He scored 11 goals in Scottish League One, which I don't understand. Well, I don't really know what the standard is like. I'm not sure how it translates, but I'd probably assume it's below League Two level, if I'm being honest.
Joe,
he scored 17 goals in 7 years between the Southern Premier and the National League isn't great. I don't.
To put this into perspective, Joe, 2 starts, 8 sub-appearances. And but he's being spoken about like he's been here 20 starts and can't hit a bull's ass with a banjo. Like that just seems really, really harsh.
It is harsh. The reaction's harsh. It reminds me a little bit of Vincent Pericard in the first season. Obviously, you had Austin and you had Painter banging in, and you had Pericard off the bench now and again. And he didn't pull up trees, but he was it was moaned at whenever he went for a warm-up. And I get shades of that a little bit with Tommy. I want Tommy to do well, but he had a chance on Saturday to play half an hour, and there was moments where, he had one where he had a chance to break onto a loose ball at the back, and he was just on his heels. He wasn't there for it. And he's had chances, and he hasn't taken those chances.
Mm. I mean,
Sorry, a part of that as well is that I've spoken to other fans because obviously he's been at teams, and they've all said that he's one of the worst footballers they've ever seen, and and sometimes I think it's more than anything, it might be just his reputation more than anything is why people are on his back.
Well, it's an interesting one, Chris, because his youth career took in Chelsea, Charlton Athletic, and Millwall. His senior career, for a guy that, bearing in mind, he's only 26 years old, he's played for Stoke, Macclesfield, Colchester, Chelmsford, Dover, Leatherhead, Welling, Leatherhead again, Chester, Altrincham, FC United of Manchester, St Albans City, Hartlepool United, Whitehawk, Wickham, Dagenham and Redbridge, Ebbsfleet, East Kilbride, Barnet, Ayr United, and finally Swindon Town. For a 26-year-old, that is, I mean, beyond journeyman status, isn't it?
Yeah, but then you ask yourself, why has he played for so many teams?
Well, yeah, you do ask that question, but again, look, it's not. I don't even almost want to be kind of. I want to kind of go on what it is people have seen. Forget that stuff. What have they seen? Because I'll tell you what I've seen. Watch him very, very closely in the warm-ups when he has been in and around the squad, and he is like unerringly accurate with his finishing. Like the guy hits the target, hits it with pace. Now, I don't know what's going on in training. I don't get to see that. My son was involved in some supporting the media team during the summer when Tommy was at training. And I said, like, how were the boys looking? And he was like, actually, he goes, that lad, Adeloy, that we've signed, he said he was absolute dynamite in the shooting drills. So I can only go on. I'm like, right, you're a striker. You know how to hit the back of the net.
The problem is, Hannah, he might be good at finishing, but he just... I mean, we watched him for half an hour on Saturday. I can't remember him having a shot. He wasn't in the right positions. He was on the back foot all the time. He wasn't anticipating the defenders taking loose touches. You can be the best finisher in the world, respectfully, but if you're not going to put the shift in, if you're not going to make the runs, if you're not going to put the effort in to take a chance on getting an opportunity out of nothing, you're not going to score goals, especially in this division.
Hey, listen,
I think the main difference. Oh, go on, Liz.
I'm not being a big apologist for Tommy Adeloy. I genuinely just want to try and fish out of you, like, what is it I'm not seeing to kind of balance what it is that, like, the grief that he gets. So I think, I mean, you're being more than fair and measured, Joe. If that's what you're seeing, that's what you're seeing, right? Sorry, Max, you were jumping in.
Oh, yeah. I think, I mean, you look at put him next to Jephcott. I think one of the biggest differences is the movement in the box. I agree. I've noticed the same thing Hannah's about, that Adeloy seems like a good finisher in the drills, but I think he doesn't seem to have the instinct in the box and the movement to get into the right places where he can take those chances, right? Like, I think that's typical of a non-league player. I watch a lot of non-league football up here and seen like teams like FC United and Altrincham who he was with. And that's the main difference is, you know, it's harder to get those chances at this level because you're playing against professional, sometimes like really good defenders. And I think he just can't seem to find the space that Jephcott can. I think until he learns that, I don't think he's going to get as many goals. I mean, on the stat, I think I was looking on the stats and he's got something like 0.2 expected goals for the season. So that shows you that he's not getting into the positions to score goals. He's not getting into positions to get himself quality chances to use his obvious ability. And I think,
but I think a big part of that is well, let's be honest. Through most of this season, we're just not we've not been creating much. So for guys like Adeloy and even guys like Jephcott, there's not much chance because we've got a lot of possession, but we're just not creating anything. We're not looking like scoring. Apart from that Mansfield game, I've not been to a game when we just look like we're going to scare people and we're going to score because we're so easy to defend against.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. I don't think we're going to be floating anyone's boat by rambling on too much about a guy that's, you know, literally had a similar level of appearances as Ricky, and we've hardly spent any time talking about Ricky Aguiar. All right. So it's an interesting one, and I take on board everything you say. I think the XG, you know, his movement, again, look, I come at things from a goalkeeping point of view, so I'm not even, I'm not the best person to be passing judgment on a striker. I'm certainly not going to be giving you the ultimate word on him. Just fascinated to get an idea as to what you feel is the issues with him. But all right, listen, what I think what we will possibly do is we will come back to, the management side of things and the recruitment, because that in itself, we could probably spend an hour talking about all of that. So maybe we keep our powder dry and we come back to Scott Lindsay, Jamie Day, Gav Gunning, Sandra Di Michele, et al. Plus, I think it's only right and proper that we put Clem and Rob under the same levels of scrutiny as well. So mark my words, dear listeners, we will come back to that, possibly on the show for Saturday, when we'll be live at the county ground ahead of the clash against Wimbledon. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the departure of a certain Ben Garner. Now, interestingly, been speaking to our counterparts at Charlton Live, and Charlton Live said to us, Garner was set up to fail. I watched a bit of Swindon last year, and they played some lovely football, but it was effective because they had players like Williams, Payne, McCurdy that could press from the front and had pace. Charlton sold our only pressing striker and didn't bring anyone in capable of playing that role from the front. Our midfield is largely okay, but we don't have ball-playing centre-backs and our strikers aren't mobile enough. This was always going to be a longer-term transition, and our owner Sandgar said that to himself, but has ultimately changed his mind mid-year, leaving us in limbo with a squad made up of players from 3 or 4 different managers and with different playing styles. I hope this doesn't harm Garner's reputation, because that would be grossly unfair. Now, listen, I live smack bang in the middle pretty much of Charlton Central, and all I will say is that I have to rub shoulders with those Herberts on a pretty much daily basis. The reason why I thought that was a very, very interesting insight was that my preconception or my assumption on Garner's departure was around the fact that, similar to the way that we give Lindsay a hard time because Scott Lindsay has stepped up from the position of assistant manager to gaffer, I think Scott Lindsay, having had quite a sizable amount of his career just down the road at their sworn enemies, Crystal Palace, probably doesn't give him an enormous amount of goodwill amongst the Charlton faithful. But there hasn't really been a lot of that. And actually, there's an awful lot of sympathy and growing discord being thrown in the direction of Sandgard, their owner. So, Max, what did you make of Garner going? Because it's very hard for us to be sympathetic, isn't it?
It's really hard, but I've got my views on the way he left us. But I think, you look at Charlton, just seems like a total basket case. Like, they seem to have an owner. I think his missus was on Twitter giving stuff back to fans and all the talk of a project, and you sack a manager after 6 months. I'm no fan of sacking a manager after 6 months if you're gonna like you say, if they sold their only pressing striker, and we saw how important that was for us, having someone especially at the start of the season when Tyrese was that for us. He was a key part in the way that Garner played. And it's obvious that he wanted more players than he got, although he did get quite a lot of players in that transfer window. So it might have been a mix of that coming from their ownership, saying that, well, you signed all these players, and where are they sitting in League One at the minute?
Charlton, they're about mid-table, are they not?
Yeah, and I assume that they're one of those teams that want to go for promotion. But I mean, League One's a tough level. It's more of a step up than I think people give it credit for when you're coming up. I think it helps sometimes when the League Two teams have a bit of momentum behind it. But you look at some of the massive clubs that come into that league now, and it is a tough league to get out of.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because Charlton are currently sat, if you look at the table, it doesn't make for pretty reading, but they're in 17th spot. So 17th of 24. But interestingly, they're only one win off of jumping up to 11th, or potentially, and then, another win thereafter, and then they're back in touch with the playoffs. But the fact is, their form makes pretty ugly reading. Loss, drawn, loss, loss. Charlton in League One, we got to remember, it wasn't that long ago. Well, I guess it is now. But, Charlton were a steady Eddie Premier League team. They're a big club. They're fast becoming, or referred to these days as, a sleeping giant. But I think, listen, from my point of view, I just think anybody that is given the opportunity to come and manage our magnificent club, irrespective of whether or not they get a rough ride from our fans, I think it's only right and proper that you say goodbye. You know, if you're going to leave under the circumstances that you do, I think you owe us an explanation.
Yeah, that still bothers me. It still bothers me that we never got anything, and the fact that we took. I mean, we did. I know that we were in this position, but we took a chance on him after a pretty torrid time he had at Bristol Rovers, and trusted him with, you know, building an entire squad from pretty much scratch. And
we gave the bloke a Welsh international and Johnny Williams, for God's sake. We backed him to the absolute hill. He had nothing. I don't think Charlton spent a penny in the summer. So they've told him, "Oh yeah, come over here. We'll give you a red shirt. Look at this lovely new stadium, but you're going to get fuck all in terms of a transfer budget." Yeah. And honestly, he's probably looking back, and I think he's probably misread the room massively.
Yeah, because he had such a project to build on with us. I think that he was probably a bit short-sighted, and I also think that Charlton probably made the mistake of not getting Ben Chorley with him, because obviously that was a massive part. But it's obvious that him and Chorley worked well together, because Chorley identified the players that fit Garner's system so well, and you can't really point to a position last year where we were that weak. We were good all over the pitch.
Well,
that's what happens when you go to a big club with big expectations. It's a massive risk, and they're not going to be scared to sack you even if you are on a 3 or 4 year deal. They'll get rid of you if things start turning the wrong way and you're approaching a January transfer window, because they're probably thinking, oh, okay, we're 3 points off of jumping a few places. We'll go get a steady League One manager, maybe someone like a Darren Ferguson, who I know we've mentioned, who they might see him as a sort of manager who will come in and get them out of the situation they're in.
Yeah, I'll guarantee you they'll appoint Kenny Jackett. But anyway,
yeah,
I'm not going to spend too much time waffling on about because I don't particularly like talking about Charlton, because I'm stomach full of it growing up around here, and B, I don't really want to kind of give Ben Garner any more airtime than we need to, really, because as I said, fundamentally, I don't think Ben Garner got any level of vitriol from the Swindon Town fans that would justify him disappearing off without at least offering us some kind of explanation or best wishes for the future. So, sorry, Ben Garner, but those with bad manners are never going to get a pat on the back from me.
What's his grade? Is it a U?
I beg your pardon?
What was Ben Garner's grade then? Is it a U?
I'm not even going to go there, to be honest. I think he was expelled at the end of the year and had his desk thrown out the window straight in the skip. He can get in the bush. So, well, obviously, as I mentioned, we're back at the county ground ourselves on Saturday, watching our lads at 3 p.m, despite a cheeky request from Wimbledon to change the kickoff time, which obviously we've got a small matter of England-France to consider as well on Saturday. Josh Davison's first touch at the county ground since the Port Vale playoff game. So it'd be nice to see Josh back, but obviously he's doing particularly well in a blue shirt. He's well amongst the goals and certainly on course for a 20-goal plus season, particularly as Wimbledon's form has increased fantastically well after a wretched start. The current form reads drawn, won, drawn, and they've won their last two, in comparison to Town having lost our last two and drawn one prior to that, as we hit somewhat of a plateau. Good to see, I think, as a club. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Wimbledon. I love everything that they represent, and it's great to see them back at Plough Lane. I'm very much looking forward to getting back to Plough Lane, or getting to see Plough Lane later on in the season. But they are going to pose us a bit of an interesting test on Saturday. They've obviously got Chris Gunter in their ranks. Chris Gunter was obviously also part of the World Cup squad, along with Johnny Williams. So a strange quirk of fate in that both those lads come back from Doha and get to do the old halfway line, shaky hands, pat on the head before the match. Yeah, listen, in the interest of time, we're going to keep our powder dry because we've got an awful lot to get through in relation to Wimbledon on Saturday. So, but nonetheless, just mark your cards. We will be setting up a show. Take advantage of the reminder service that Twitter Spaces gives you, should you so wish, if you're not going to be making it to the county ground. But if you are, please come in the Legends Lounge and interact with us. Get stuck into the show. Join in with us. We do reward quality contributions. So we're hoping to see a little bit more of that. A little tip of the hat towards the development squad who played yesterday, we mentioned before, unfortunately a 2-1 defeat at the hands of Newport, which saw starts for Jack Copland, Morgan Roberts, Tyree Shade and Reece Devine, no less. So again, potentially with half an eye on the weekend, we will see. Johnny Williams managed about 45 minutes and Angus MacDonald was back, as we mentioned, but more worryingly, Matt Bowdery was crocked after 28 minutes. Interestingly enough, given the flow of the content tonight, Tommy Adeloy managed to score. But unfortunately, a Marcel Lavinier own goal and a late winner from none other than Wilfred Boney. Remember him? Saw the Newport development team home. It was clearly more than a development squad. There were a lot of first teamers involved in both of their sides, both of the sides on show. They were brushing the rust off. Swindon Town women were in action at the weekend. Unfortunately, they lost their County Cup game on Sunday against Warminster. Largely second string 11. No offence, ladies. That's how I read it. Please feel free to contact me if I'm wrong. It was 0-0 at half time and at full time, obviously. And the ladies went on to crash out on penalties. So keep them peeled. The ladies are back in cup action on the 18th of December when they take on either Hounslow or Southampton. And I believe that that's a home game to be confirmed. Club have dropped me a line and asked me just to give everybody a nudge for the last few remaining tickets for the club's Christmas Knees Up, which takes place tomorrow. The club's Christmas party tomorrow at 8:30 in the Legends Lounge. There is going to be a DJ, but perhaps more interestingly for you lot, half the first team are going to be there, and Jonah Isaacs is going to be there wearing a Christmas jumper and singing, all for the pricely sum of £5 a ticket. So if you're able to get to the county ground tomorrow with £5 burning a hole in your pocket, please do get stuck in and get involved. And last but not least, just bringing us up close to our midnight finish. Delighted today to welcome Sir Tom Broadbent into the wonderful world of sports sponsorship. Tom Broadbent is the latest partner to throw his weight behind the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. Tom, as you know, has departed Eastleigh and took up a playing role with South Shields up in the northeast of England. But Tom is also taking gainful employment from Game Plan Financial, where he is now a financial broker. We're going to be doing a whole host of things with Tom. I was on the phone to him today, and we have got some superb plans that we're going to be unfolding. I promise you this, they will warm any town fans' cockles. Tom's just asked me at this stage, just to let you know, that the Game Plan Financial are primarily a financial institution that provide tailored financial services to professional sports persons, and they're predominantly professional sports people themselves that are offering the advice and the packages. But it doesn't stop with professional sports people. So if anyone listening has any interest in speaking to Tom about life insurance, business protection and mortgages, you can go on to Tom's Twitter biography and all the links to get directly in contact with Tom and set up an appointment in his diary for Tom to be able to talk to you about your sensible financial planning. They're all there for you. You will be speaking to Tom directly, which is obviously always a bonus. But Tom was keen for me to offer you this interesting introductory offer. If you are going to go and make an appointment to speak to Tom, he will offer a complimentary will writing service to you as part of an introductory referral. So get in touch with Tom. That will save you approximately, based on my own personal knowledge, probably about 200 to 250 quid. And there's no obligation to take up any of those other services as well, from what I understand from Tom. So get in touch with Tom at Game Plan Financial. As I say, congrats and welcome Tom Broadbent himself to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, but in a slightly different capacity. And like I said, in the coming weeks and months, there is going to be an awful lot of interesting stuff happening at the county ground that we'll be doing hand in hand with Tom. So really, really excited to be telling you about that as those plans crystallise moving forward. Last thing that I was going to say is there is, of course, anyone that's been following us on Twitter, an elephant in the room. And all I'm willing to tell you at this stage is, God almighty, we love every single listener that's tuned into the show tonight. We are an independent Twitter space, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tom Broadbent Lounge is, and it's been our absolute pleasure having you. Our views do not represent those of Swindon Town Football Club, or indeed Sir Tom Broadbent himself. Thank you ever so much for everyone that's tuned into another mammoth show, almost 3 hours of content. I hope if you've listened live, you've got a kick out of listening to us, and mainly me, droning on. But if you've listened to the recorded show, or you are fighting your way back through the recorded show over the course of the week, again, hope you enjoyed it. We really look forward to catching up with you all again on Saturday, live from the county ground. But for now, Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hannahs.
It's been a treat. Chris, thank you very much, pal.
Always a pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure.
Max, lovely to have you on again, pal. Thanks for sticking with us. It's been a treat.
No, it's a very nice one.
And I'm only ever going to say nice things about Ellis for fear of any man that is willing to pay money to have his own face bashed in by other people. Ellis, it's been a treat having you, pal.
Thank you. I'd never punch you, Hannahs. Never.
And to everyone else aboard Her Majesty's ship, Piss the League, thank you very, very much for your time and your company and your candour and everything else you've contributed. It's been our treat having you. We'll catch up with you all on Saturday.